Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting of Monday, June 7, 2021. Please rise for a prayer by Pastor Janine Rue Whirling of Hosanna Lutheran Church.
Let us pray. Gracious Father, we thank you for good government. We thank you for public servants who are willing to give their time and treasure and talent for the good of the community. We thank you for an informed citizenry, and we thank you for the treasured gift of being able to vote. We thank you for the town of Watertown and all it gives us, and we thank you for this time together, for the work that the mayor, the city council does. We pray that you would bless the deliberations and the conversations and the discussions for the greater good this night. And we pray that you would be with us as well in all we do, day in and day out. All this, Lord, with grateful hearts, we pray in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Halverson?
Here.
Bueller? Absent? Okay. Hoyer?
Here.
Boleen?
Here.
Wallum?
Here.
Manti?
Here.
Rademski?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Billhauer?
Here.
Y?
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Have a motion by Helene and a second by Manti. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public comments. This is the time reserved for anyone who would like to make a public comment to step forward and do so. We normally have a sign-up sheet, but it's not back there today. So anyway, if anyone wishes to speak, please come forward and to the microphone and state your name. If you're online, just say request permission to speak. If your comments relate to an agenda item, please wait for that agenda item. Would anyone like to speak? See no one, we'll move on. To item 7, approval of agenda, and I have a whole bunch of changes to make here. So first of all, I'm going to move item X, which is the multi-purpose ice arena update, which was the last item on the agenda. I'll move that to the first item on the agenda because I know a lot of you are here to talk about that, or listen anyway. So we'll move that to the top, and then I want to move item N immediately after that. So N will be second. I want to move item J above item I and remove totally items C, L, and W. So with that, I have a motion. Who was it?
Glenn.
Billhauer, and second by Helene. And okay, so discussion. Councilman?
Recuse myself from items A, B, D, E, G, and I.
Mayor,
Yeah, see you next week.
Oh, no, we got plenty more agenda items.
I would do the same as well.
Okay, Councilman Y. Anyone else? Councilman Hoyer.
I'll be recusing myself from A, B, D, and then E.
Okay. But Josh, you were the same as Don?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if I need to remove it from G and I. That would be up to the
Well, I was
Matt.
going to make the comment too, and I'm not sure the statute would only require the removal from the licensure approvals. So Don wouldn't necessarily need to recuse from G and I, those ordinance amendments?
Yeah, so
Okay, everybody's on for G and I? Great. A, B, D, and E. Okay. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, here we go with the regular agenda, and we will start with the committee update on the multi-purpose ice facility. Councilman Holleen?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to wait just a moment while Councilman Roby sets up. Councilman Roby has a PowerPoint presentation to go along with the update. So, as chairman of the ICE committee for the City Council of Watertown, I just wanted to give an update as to a lot of exciting things that have been happening and the momentum that continues to build to solve this, let's say, years old, if not decades old, problem that the City of Watertown has been trying to solve. So, with that, we will give an update on the ice arena and the lakes at Willow Creek Economic Development Site. Just to give you a quick idea of what the agenda is, we'll go through a history, discuss the March 29th presentation where we voted unanimously to approve this proposal, our memorandum of understanding, quick talk about finance. We will hear from our owner's representative, Dick Strasberg from Tegra Group. We will discuss the engineering and keeping the momentum. Before I go any further, I do want to acknowledge that we do have some visitors out here, and I wanted to, in particular, point out Mark Vox from Watertown Development Company. He is here to discuss this if need be. We also have Jamie Andrews from J&J Earthworks, Jesse Craig from Craig LLC, and of course the City Council. So we have all four players who signed the memorandum of understanding that is keeping this project going forward. I also want to acknowledge Adam Sullivan, the head of our Design Review Committee, and Vince Foley, president of Watertown Hockey Association, and Marcy Cole, president of Watertown Figure Skating Club. Thank you. With that, the timeline. Back in November of last year, we reconstituted the ICE committee with the goal of solving the ice problem in Watertown. We discussed multiple sites, and in the end, we unanimously chose one site above all others as providing the most benefit to Watertown. In January of this year, the user groups came forward and committed to fundraising for this project. In February, First Premier Bank pledged $1 million. Now, this is just $1 million of $3.75 million that we have pledged if this proposal goes forward. We had our City Council presentation on March 29th of this year at the lakes at Willow Creek. It received unanimous approval to move forward with a memorandum of understanding. I want to make that clear. We didn't vote. The idea was not finished at that time. It was just we agreed to a memorandum of understanding to move forward to reach completion. We had the full support of the council and the mayor. I encourage anyone who is curious as to the proposal, go back and watch that and see the glowing reviews that all of us up here said about it. April of this year, we hired Tegra Group, Dick Strasberg representing them as our owner's rep for the city to make sure that everything is above board, architecture, soil, flood, everything. May of this year, the Planning Commission, just a couple weeks ago, Planning Commission unanimously approved the plat for the lakes at Willow Creek. Also in last month, we visited, as the ICE committee, visited several sites to move forward with architectural designs and move forward with this project. Ongoing, we just need to commit to this process and see the memorandum of understanding through to completion. That's what we agreed to on March 29th, and that's what we are here to basically keep moving forward with. And with this, we have true collaboration. We have had staff in on city staff in on several meetings. We have had user groups, and of course, our owner's representative being part of all of these meetings. Yep, sorry. The Lakes at Willow Creek is a mixed-use development. It includes economic development opportunity that no other site offered. It does have the ice. A hotel will come with it. We will have apartments, affordable housing, office space, restaurants, and retail. It is a public-private partnership, as most of you will remember. The WDC will finance it, and the city will lease to own the facility. We have potential of $50 million of potential construction, economic development for the city of Watertown, bringing in a lot of revenue to this city, not including the revenue brought in from the ice arena. Again, just want to stress, the council had unanimous support behind this originally, and the mayor signed our memorandum of understanding. We have had incredible positive public feedback right after the proposal was made, announced.
I will address the memorandum of understanding. Many of you have probably heard the phrase letter of intent, which is typically a two-party agreement. A memorandum of understanding is a phrase that's used for multiple parties. This was signed on March 29th, 2021, after the approval at the council. It is a four-party agreement. It's with the city of Watertown, signed by the mayor, the Watertown Development Company, signed by their president, J&J Earthworks, signed by Mr. Andrews, and Craig Development, signed by Mr. Craig. Again, a public-private partnership. I would like to reiterate to everybody that this is very much a unique agreement. The WDC got together with some others and brought this forward as a total economic type of plan versus just a one-building plan. It was to develop a whole area that could really increase the tax base. I think it's important to understand that this is not a legally binding agreement. And what it is, it's an agreement that protects all parties, all four parties. It is a mutually accepted list of expectations. So the agreement does have weight, but again, there are some legal outs, if you will. I should say it's not legally binding, so you're not legally bound by all the terms and conditions. However, it is an agreement in good faith. All four parties signed this with the idea that this is the plan we're going to kind of work with and move forward. So it does allow the process to move forward, full support of the council and the mayor. In this meeting on the 29th, which Reed mentioned earlier, it kind of reminded me of one of the Wellness Center committee meetings we had years ago when you could see the community rallying around it. And I saw that happen on the 29th, where I think everybody really rallied around the project. I do want to address a couple things about finance. Budget. When I joined the council 8 years ago, the number we were talking about was about $8 million. And costs have continued to rise. It's fair to say that's probably doubled by now, maybe even more so. And I've heard numbers higher than that. The fact of the matter is, we don't know what the costs are until we get a design, get an architect involved, and then we can start figuring out what the product's going to look like, and then we can start figuring out costs. But rest assured, those of us on the council and the citizens involved, we are very concerned about where the costs are going. We're watching that closely. I would also add, though, it's interesting that we're in a very low interest rate environment, so that makes it a positive from that sense. In terms of the agreement we signed, the financing would be with the Watertown Development Company, with the TIF involved. A lot of detail behind that, but it was a very unique agreement that was very attractive to us, seemed to benefit all parties, and hence we moved forward with that MOU. I don't know where that MOU is going to end up. We've got a lot of steps to work through, but we're working through those as we speak. If in the end that financing doesn't work out, we have talked with our finance officer, Kristen, about bonding, but right now we are going to follow through with that MOU, as I think we are bound to do. In terms of cost, I want to mention two more things.
Sure. I'd just like to interject a little bit about what Don just touched on. 2 points I'd like to make here. One, the interest rates. They are at a 60-year low currently. That's why we can't totally discount the idea of going out bonding for this. But I also want to clarify relative to the bond. These are sales tax revenue bonds. We are not looking at issuing a general obligation bond, which will come on the back of the property owners in the community or the county. These will be paid out of our second penny sales tax, so that's different than a general obligation bond. I think there's some confusion out there. That's what we're looking at offering, and no, that is not the case. So low interest rates and sales tax revenue bonds.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. 2 points about the budget, though. you're going to hear from Dick Strasberg in a little bit, but he's our owner's representative. And we've got him engaged because we don't have all the in-house expertise to build a facility like this. So Dick's going to be somebody that's going to be our consultant. He's going to educate us. He's going to review everything we get involved in. And that's what his company does. He has all kinds of experts he can rely on. So we elected to engage with Tegra Group and, again, Dick Strasberg as our owner's representative. I just want to mention one thing about, again, the cost. The thing that's going to be a lot of focus throughout the process is really what's called value engineering. And again, Dick can talk about this, but to briefly describe it, really what value engineering is we look at the design that we're given, and we can tweak that design, we can change the materials. What the engineers and the designers try to do is to extract cost out of the equation without losing functionality. That's really a big area of focus that Dick, working with the developers, will focus upon. Now, a couple of site visits we've been on. I'm going to turn it over to Glenn because he made both of those trips.
Sure, thanks, Don. 2 weeks ago today, Councilman Bruce Bueller and myself went over to Shakopee, Minnesota, and met Dick Strasberg at that facility. And then the next day, Bruce, myself, and Don, you rode along that time, went to West Fargo, North Dakota, again met with, along with Dick. Our visits were not to review the facility itself necessarily as far as, okay, this is what we want for Watertown. That was not the purpose of it. Our purpose was to talk to two top-notch architectural firms that know their business when it comes to designing ice facilities. We wanted to sound them out. We asked a lot of difficult questions. Appreciate Dick leading the charge on that, just so we knew, get ourselves a little bit more familiar with what some of the things that we need to be aware of as we design and hopefully build this at some point. The Shakopee Ice Committee, or Shakopee Ice Community Center, the 292 Design Group was the architectural firm that we met over there. For those of you that have been following the ice discussion for, 10, 11 years now, you may recall that we engaged them back in 2010 or 2011 to do a review of our current facility to see if it was feasible to add a second facility. So they were familiar with Watertown. So that's our relationship at 292 Design Group. GLJ Architects, the West Fargo firm that we met with, they're actually the ones that the architects involved with our Prairie Lakes Wellness Center. So they're very familiar with the community, with the climate and the culture down here, and the outstanding architects. We came away from both those visits, feeling very good about, if this would be one of the firms that we are working with, we're going to be in good hands. What was interesting, and it was a relatively new term to me because I'm not a construction person, is the value engineering, that was brought out by both these firms, that, hey, they understand budget constraints. There's ways to save dollars, still get the same functionality and use for what we're looking at. Same thing that was done at the Wellness Center when JLG was involved in that. A lot of value engineering that saved millions of dollars on that facility, and yet we still come out with an outstanding facility up there. But again, purpose of our visits was not to come up with ideas for the actual facility. It was more to interview potential architects. What we envision as we get down the road on this is that we would like to do what we did with the Wellness Center a number of years ago, get together a bus tour of community members, city staff, other stakeholders, and tour some facilities for people that know the business, that know what we're looking for a facility, because I think that's going to be a key component. But that was not the purpose of our site visits, but they were very good visits and very educational to Bruce, Don, and myself, in my opinion. So anyway, that's just a few comments on the site visits that we conducted a couple weeks ago.
Thanks, Glenn. Back to the memorandum of understanding. The reason why we signed that again was so it gave us the option to move forward. both parties want to know that the other party's serious about doing this. So on behalf of the developers and such, they're investing money into the project right now, and the MOU gave them confidence to do that. The fact that we were a part of the MOU gave us confidence in going forward to make these trips to further the cause. I do want to address one issue before Dick comes up, because we've gotten this question quite a bit, and that is the soil and the site. There have been some concerns brought up with those. They're legitimate questions, and I wanted to just go back to the Memorandum of Understanding, which again is a document that protects all parties. I'm going to read a statement from that. It's one of the points. And it says, if, in the sole and absolute discretion of the city, the property is not conducive for construction of the facility, J&J and the city shall agree upon a mutually acceptable alternative location in the development. If J&J and the city fail to identify a mutually acceptable alternative location in the development, the responsibilities of the parties under this Memorandum of Understanding shall cease. So we do want to address that. I know Dick will touch upon a little bit, because that's the question we're getting, and it's a valid question, but we are protected within the MOU on that particular topic.
Don, can I add something on that just real quick?
Sure.
I just want to stress, of all of the sites that we considered in Watertown, every single site had some soil to be moved. This is the only site where the city of Watertown has the assurance that it will be done not on the taxpayer dime. This is being done by J&J Earthworks. We are out nothing as a city while this site gets prepared. And only if it receives our full and complete satisfaction do we move forward with this location. No other deal, no other location could even come remotely close to as good of a deal as this is for the city of Watertown.
Okay. Thanks, Reed. So with that, I'm going to bring up Dick Strasberg from the Tegra Group.
Good evening. First, I just got a comment. It's great to be back in Watertown. As many of you know, I grew up not too far from here. I graduated from Clear Lake High School, and still have the family farm that's right down 29, right off the Brant exit. And it's great to be here. Worked on the wellness center, and I was, we come back here a fair amount, so it wasn't completely new, but starting to work and just seeing what's happening in this city, it's amazing. And then to come back, 5 years later, it's just real encouraging to see what's happening here. You've got just a great city and a great place to live. So I can tell you just a little bit about the Tegra Group. Some of you know, but I'll just kind of run through it. First, I'm an architect by background. I went to NDSU. And as an architect, I saw that there were owners that had their act together and other ones that just didn't have their act together. And it was a lot easier as an architect to work with a knowledgeable owner, someone who knew the process, someone who had been through it before. And then I worked for a developer, first in Colorado Springs and then Los Angeles. Worked on very large projects. And I realized that, the owner needs a voice to make sure that, someone's representing the owner, because developers, contractors, architects, they know their business as well. But, let's make sure that the one who's, in this case, that would be the tenant on it, that's ultimately paying for it, make sure they've got a voice. So we started Tegra 25 years ago, and we were fortunate to work on a lot of great projects. The ones that are notable are the big ones like Target Field or Target Center, Allianz Field, those kind of projects, big headquarter kind of projects. But I'm 61, and I did the Sioux Falls Event Center, and when I did that, it's like, man, people in South Dakota are great. I'm going to finish my career working in South Dakota, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So we got projects ranging from Vermilion. We're doing Rapid City Event Center right now. So we know these kind of projects well. We know ice, hockey, and you've got a great. I love the structure on this deal. It's a unique one, maybe to Watertown, but it's not completely unique to how other cities have put together projects. And it looks like you've got a good process. So basically, if you looked at our role, if I were to summarize it, it's to say that we're process managers. We manage the process, and we keep it going. And it's a little bit, an analogy might be like a jazz band, because jazz band, there's a leader in a jazz band, but you maybe don't know who it is, because someone will do their little gig and the next person does their gig, But there's a leader, and that's usually what our role is. If anything, we might be the drummer, making sure everything keeps moving, keeping everybody in line, keep keep the tempo of it going. So that's what we've structured the firm as. We've got, I happen to be an architect, others that are, construction background, interior design, legal, property management, what else am I missing? Accounting, banking. So we've got, a variety of people that are familiar with these kind of projects. And what we've learned is if you're a, 3M and you're going to build a plant in Watertown, they come here and they look at the property and they size it up and they have a whole team that comes out here. And it's really, we've modeled our group really after in-house real estate groups like that. Because that's what they've got. They've got, attorneys and they've got people that know real estate and finance and design, construction, and so on. So that's what our company is, just on a third-party basis. And we've been fortunate to work on some great projects. So if we look at this project, kind of at the beginning of it, I'll just run through the process that we would, foresee on this project. First, you got a good start. You got a memo of understanding. That's an accomplishment to get to that, and to all the things it takes to get there. But if I had a whiteboard, I'd probably take a handful of markers, and I'd hold them in my fist, and I'd go up and I'd start scribbling. And then as I moved across the board, some waves, and then it ended up being aligned with parallel lines. Well, right now you're in that stage where the roles and responsibilities are all bumping into each other, and it's all, there's a lot of agendas trying to, be heard, voices to be heard, and there's still a lot more of that to come. With, I happen to have a daughter that was a figure skater, and got up real early in the morning to take her in because, the fight for ice time is big. Because everybody wants that same sweet time in the morning and right after school. So there's still a lot of that's got to be worked out. But I think the thing I'd throw out there after being through this process, I can say many, many, many times, is there's a lot of at this stage, there's a lot of opinions, a lot of emotions, a lot of things that look like it can unravel. That's normal. That's how these projects work. They go through this snarly time right now. But if we look at this project, within, 60 to 90 days, it should start to be kind of still some things bumping into each other. But, pretty soon it'll become parallel lines where the roles and responsibilities are defined and understood. And right now it's a snarly time, and like doing the site due diligence. We don't have the team yet hired to do it. So the process is, we interviewed the architects, and we're still asking them for more information here. But once an architect is selected, then they'll have their team of engineers, structural engineers, mechanical, civil, their whole team, and they've got ICE experts. The two that we happen to interview both have the same expert, same one that we've worked with on many of these projects, and so you get the team put together, and that's when the real work starts, because they'll start out with looking at what the community needs, and it's there's been a lot of preliminary work done with with the stakeholders that would be using this facility, but there needs to be a lot more. So it really gets vetted out with with the different interests in it, and to really figure out what is needed. And something that comes up on all these projects is this whole thing of what do you do when it's not ice, and that's, I can tell you, it's a spectrum that can run from having you melt the ice and you use it for a wedding reception, and it can go the other extreme. You'd use it for a big concert and show power and lights and everything. And our process on that is, let's get the architects to come in and outline some of these things. Then we get the pricing on it. Now you can make decisions. Now you can say, is it worth $1 million more to have X, Y, Z, or whatever the points are. Because right now it's hard, because this is where we kind of bump into each other. It's like, I want this, I want that, and that's typical. But once you start getting dollars on it, then you can start making, decisions. Bring it to what I call a business person decision. So many of you are business people, and you can look at it and say, this is how much it costs. It costs another $200,000 to do this, or $500,000 to do that. Now you can make decisions. So the process is, you get the architect hired, and then you do the community input. And I'm very big on tours, because on Target Field, when I sat with the owners of Target Field, they decided they wanted to have a local owner's rep. And I told them I've never done a baseball stadium. I told them I'm the wrong guy, because I didn't think I could do it. And they wanted somebody local, so kind of agreed to them. But I said, we got to be able to go study these other facilities. So we did. There's 30 Major League baseball facilities, and we've studied most of them, went to most of them, and really got into the details on it. just the real details on it, on how do you do these things. And then also with that, one of the big advantages of doing these tours, you get to know the people who are running them. So now you've got this whole cast of characters you call when you're making decisions. And you're like take the ICE system you'll be dealing with here. Let's talk to the people that have had it for 5-10 years and see how it works. And so now you get this whole network when you start to talk to these other people, and you start getting some real good input on it. And the reason Target Field got voted as the top professional sports venue, I'm convinced, is because we just went around and learned and didn't make the same mistakes everybody else did. And plus, everybody wants to help you, especially when you're a city like this doing this. All the other cities, they want to help. So that's part of the process. Get out there and learn from others, learn the mistake, and have it something where there's people that are the hockey people involved, and get people involved that really understand these things, and then come to decisions. So our job is to manage the process and to guide you through it. And we've done this now for 25 years. We have not had one over budget yet. That's why I got gray hair, I think. And I think that, but if you manage the process and do carefully consider it, that's achievable. The caveat I say on that right now, in 35 years of doing this, I've never seen cost escalation in construction like we got right now. What we're seeing in steel, it's nuts. We had one project, for example, that we bought out the steel in December at $1,900 a ton, and we have another one that was at $4,300 a ton recently, and we've got one priced up right now where they were talking about $7,200 a ton. So we're in some hyperinflation right now. It will likely level out by the time this gets built. I think you see it in home building, the cost of lumber. And it's just a real unsettled time right now. But also the thing that is a counterbalance to that is the low interest rates. Because I was born in 59, and that's the last time, 1959 is the last time we saw interest rates that are where they're at right now. So that's just a quick overview on it, and we can talk more specifics on it. The process is, I just want to touch on the soil thing because I know that's something that's being discussed, is first there's a soils report that was completed, and I met with Jesse and Jamie and Mark this afternoon, and just discussed it, didn't get into the details on it. But what I want to know is who did it, and at first it was AET, very reputable firm. I can say we've worked with them. They're a firm based in Minneapolis, and they do most of the work, in this region as well, or a lot of work in this region. We've probably done over 100 projects with them. They're a very reputable firm, and we've used them on big projects. Just use them on the headquarters for Thrivent. They're a very solid firm, so we trust that report. And the questions I asked. The landowner, I said, so tell me about this. So it's a gravel pit, so is there fill? And the answer is, of course, there's fill in every gravel pit we've developed, and that's not unusual. And where's the water table at? So we know those two things. Well, the fill on this site, it's got to be taken out. So I go to the MOU, and fortunately, whoever negotiated it did a good job. It's the landowner that's responsible for bringing that back up to an engineered fill. So I have to have engineered fill. And AET would be the one testing it. They tested every foot that it comes back up, and that's very typical. It's not unusual to have soil that needs to be removed and brought in with engineered fill. It's a little unusual to have this much of it, but this is a gravel pit, so that's not unusual. But there's fill material that's nearby, and the way you negotiate the development agreement, or the MOU for the development agreement, is that it would be on the responsibility of the land seller to bring it up to an engineered fill level. And then also on the floodplain, I met with Heath on it, and we talked through that. And he met with FEMA, talking through that. And I'm not an engineer. I'm an architect by background. And also I would say this. The ones that have to have their name on this thing are the firms that we hire here. The architect of record, the engineer of record. And they aren't about to do something when they have their name on it and their neck on a line on it. They're going to make it right. They have to. And when we're involved, they know I'd say they absolutely have to, because we know this. We know what's involved with it. And the fact you got an AET on the soils issue, I think that relieves my concerns on it. That it will get brought, it will be corrected to what's needed. and also knowing that the engineers, I personally know the engineers that both of these firms have proposed, and they're conservative. They aren't going to sign off on anything unless they've got the compaction reports and everything tested from AET. So that's my perspective on soils. I think the next process then is to, is to make the architect selection after they get back to us with their fees and some of the things we've asked them for, and then start letting them dig in and start getting the community input and drill into the process. So that's my perspective on it. I could talk all day on it. I love this stuff, but I'll hush up and ask if you've got any questions or kind of go from there.
Thank you. Council, Councilman Hoyer?
One of the questions that's come up for me has been with the floodplain, actually, and it's good that we just recently talked to FEMA, but with us potentially displacing this floodplain, what is the environmental impact of that? Where do we expect to see that push downriver if we do flood?
What we'd recommend on that, and we've done this with quite a few cities, is have a hydrologist look at the big picture. Look at the big picture and see where this goes, because that's all something they can calculate. And we've got some firms that specifically do that. We'd recommend it. They aren't real big studies to do it, but have a usually they're the PhD types that they are hydrologists, and that's all they do. This is what we just dealt with it in Sioux Falls. So that way, it's not wondering what will happen. It can be, engineered and know the results.
Anyone else? Councilman Hoyer?
Well, I'm just, do these have to be directed here, or can we ask questions just of the committee out of curiosity?
Oh, you can ask
anything?
anyone.
Okay. And again, everyone's in full support of the ice arena. I'm just reflecting these for other people. But there's questions right now on where we're at for budgeting, management, operations, maintenance, and promotion. Could you guys talk on that at all? Are we at that point? Are we still kind of in infancy point? And it's okay if that's the answer right now.
I'll comment, and then I'll turn it over to Dick.
Okay.
One reason we hired Dick is he has the expertise. So we could get told things by engineers, and you want to believe them, but this is our validation right here. We're bringing our own expert in, our own team member. Kind of refer to what I said earlier. I'd love to say this is what it's going to cost. And if it's too much, we're not going to vote for it. That's really what's going to happen. But we don't know yet. And I think and our hope, of course, is with the value engineering that we're going to be able to change the design to the point that we can afford the functionality we want. That's impossible to predict. Mike, I've heard numbers over 20 million, and I'm sure you guys have heard those too. The fact is we don't know till we get a design that we can start building numbers around, and I'll turn it over to Dick.
Yeah, the process we like to go through on that is start out with a concept design, and the concept may have 4 or 5 different ideas. And what we saw even in West Fargo and Shakopee, we saw one design that had the second level was really a viewing deck that went, so the seats were top loaded. So you went down to the seats on the side that had the for the audience and the fans. The other one had it where it was top going from the bottom on up. And and there's a lot of selections of the type of ice system, the way it works. Are you going to have a dry training, or having a dry room? And these things can go very elaborate. And what we see, though, is one is after doing the wellness center, the goal is you want to at least let's understand what it is to do it absolutely right. And then if we can't afford it, we got to make compromises from that. But start out with doing it right, because then you go into it eyes wide open and start pulling the prices down. One of the ways that we get these projects in on budget, we have a pricing, we recommend the construction manager at risk, and South Dakota is from a legal perspective, it's great, because you can hire the construction manager right away and have them help with the pricing, get their subcontractors in, help them understand how they can save money, because some of the subs are, there's some pretty smart people that are subcontractors, and they've seen what works and what doesn't work. So we try and get all this input in, so that way you're making the decisions you look at it big picture and organize it, on the different types, different layouts, different structural system. Is this going to be a pre-engineered building, or is it going to be a bar joist? And someone even threw out that wood, because right now there's, and I'm not sure about that, I haven't done one in wood, but in T, South Dakota, there's this Grunwald, which is a contractor, for example, that could be a potential. And they do these long span dairy barns. And, you know, and they do it, it's not, you don't have to have wood that is the, you know, the highest quality wood, because it's all glue lam beams. You know, so I don't know, there's things to look at on that, but that's that early stage where you start looking at those big picture things. Then you start building a cost model. It's not an estimate, it's really just a cost model. And you start building up on that and start looking at the options. And you know, really starting to get into it, because one of the things you've got on the variable here that's a big one is the lobby. And you think, well, how big a deal is the lobby? Well, the two that we saw are probably the most extreme that I've seen. We've got West Fargo, which has a very small lobby because it got value engineered down. The one we looked at in Shakopee has a very big lobby. And when you've got tournaments, you know, there's a lot of people coming. Having big lobby's nice, but it's a variable, and it's you know, it's got to be, you got to be able to afford a big lobby. Something we try and do though on these things is, if you think about it like with a car, you can buy a base model car. It's got the wheels, the seats, the engine, and you can drive it down the road and it works. Doesn't have the leather seats, doesn't have all the options on it, but you know, it's still a car. If we can bring it down to that level and establishing what that base model is, then we can start talking about it, you know, about having, you know, a dry training room, or having all these different nice to haves. Then it's a little easier to make it once you realize this is the minimum we've got to spend to do it. And how do the numbers look on that as far as being able to afford the lease payments on something like that?
Councilman Hoyer?
Sorry, I came with a list. So speaking of the wellness center, this is kind of one of the confidence things that we're trying to build with the public, but in the situation that we had with the wellness center, when we did a little bit of value engineering there, we currently have an issue with the bleachers in the building, and I don't know if we could talk on that and how maybe we can avoid a situation like that as we value engineer. If there's some stop processes that we have that we can look at, and maybe if you could address that a little bit.
You know, I think if we look at every project, you end up with a whole list of things that that you make compromises on. And it's just like building your house, you know. Do you want hardwood floors everywhere, or do you put, you know, lower cost carpet places, you know? So it's all, it's a choice you go through. And the thing that our role isn't to make the decisions. Our role is to make sure you can make informed decisions, saying this is what it costs to do option A versus option B. And try and get it so you've got all the information out there. And also the thing we really push on is with the relationships we have within, you know, with the operators of other facilities, we talk to them, because they'll tell us what the problems are. So you know what the problems are before you make the decision. Then there's things you've got to do, and you do on every project where, you know, this thing would be, I don't know, 25, 30 million if you got everything you wanted. So you're making compromises, and just make sure they're informed. So I think that's the thing to do, is make sure you've got, so if there is something that's going to be a problem, potential problem, okay, we cut back on it. We didn't put the glass wall in between the two pools. That was a conscious decision. And that means that the two pools have to be closer to the same temperature, which we can tell you up front, we did back then, but there wasn't the dollars to put it in. And that was, you know, the people that are training in the lap swimming, they want it colder. But the mom with a little toddler, you know, she wants it about like the bathtub. Well, you can't keep both of those happy. You know, and then if you start to keep the water temperature, you know, that far apart, you're going to have humidity problems. You're going to have problems in the building. So then you try and bring the temperatures together, and you know, make that. You know, but that's an example of a compromise, and that's what you hope you can build this thing and just kind of do it all right. Right? That's the goal at this stage. It's all sort of in the utopian stage right now, where we're going to build this great arena and everything's going to be perfect. Well, you know, that's probably something that a community like this can't afford. You'd have the spec you'd use for the ice would be the same as you'd have at NHL. You know, so then you start pulling it down a little bit. But what the goal is you have a building that you build it and you don't have to dump more money in it in the future, because it's hard enough to have the money, you know, come in up front and to pull this all together and get the lease payments and get everything you can afford. It's another thing if you got to spend $1 million later. So the goal is to try and, you know, really make a high quality facility here that's going to meet what the community needs.
Okay. I think some of what I was trying to just point to is that when we did that, they became non-functional. It's not so much the compromise. Compromises are going to happen, and that's 100% acceptable. That's part of the process. It's just if there's safeguards in that as we go forward to make sure everything is functional. And I know you guys are doing your due diligence on it. I just want it on our radar a little bit to be careful of those so we don't repeat some of our mistakes that we've unfortunately made.
And that's the thing you learn when you get, when you go to all these other facilities. I do have to throw out one comment on the wellness center, though. It's the envy of most communities. One is it operated in the black. That is not typical. And you've got we're working with another community. If they could afford to build exactly what you built, they'd build it, even with the problems. It's like, it's a very well, within the facilities like that, it's a very, very highly acclaimed facility, even though it's got some challenges like you're talking about.
Sorry, follow-on question while we're doing this. Has city staff at this point, at some point, will city staff see the borings themselves? Do you have any want to see the soil borings? I know we have the report, and that's a trustworthy document,
We
of
do?
course.
No, we don't.
Oh, we don't.
We don't have anything, do we?
If by we you mean staff, no. We have not received the full submittals for any of the work yet done to this point. I have been in conversation with the developer and made a request for additional soil bores within the right-of-way for the platted area. Now that gets a little bit off topic because I'm talking about the subdivision as a whole, not specifically just the ice arena location. And that report for the public rights-of-way, where utilities and roads will be built, is in the works as we speak by the same consulting firm that Dick has indicated, American Engineering Testing, I believe out of Sioux Falls. Again, well-renowned geotech firm that I'm sure will do a great job and provide some good, accurate information for us to assess and see what kind of soil conditions exist. With that right-of-way soil report, we are also going to be receiving pavement recommendations from that geotech engineer, which is a typical practice for geotechs to provide based on their soil bore findings. And in communications with the developer, Jamie Andrews, for, again, the entire subdivision, that helps safeguard his engineer's design. It double checks his engineer's design. It gives city staff something to check it off against. And then we use our own professional judgment to make sure that we're getting the right types of roads being designed and built in this particular type of an instance. As far as the soils report for the structure location, the proposed location for the ice facility, yes, I would anticipate getting that at some point down the road here too. From a regulatory standpoint, as far as staff is concerned, that could come as late as really as late as a building permit time frame. As far as staff is concerned, we would want to see that. We would want to have it checked off. I'd imagine being plugged in at some point. I've talked with Dick and Jamie both about that, and expect to be seeing that report sometime in the near future.
Right, because the MOU says the city will be furnished with the structural engineer's recommendation or whatever from the soil borings.
Correct.
And so we expect to see that, but we think that some people have seen it because Councilman Vilhauer was quoted in the paper as saying it looks good, structurally sound.
I'll address that comment, Mayor. When the public opinion reached out to me roughly 3 weeks ago, I had not seen it, but our committee had reached out to the developer and got the comment that at that point there was no problems foreseen with the boring. So we have not seen it other than what you've referred to now, Dick. But that's what we were going upon was the representation that we got from the developer prior to the public opinion reaching out to me.
Right. So, I mean, just based on the MOU, we'll see that some point, and I don't know when that will be, but sometime in the process, it'll all get vetted out with the design. Obviously, you can't do the design without it. So that's material for that. The MOU also, the basic premise is that the facility costs $14 million, and that's what makes it work. And that's what was so beautiful and why I supported the MOU was that everything was going to be complied with and the city wasn't going to have to bond because we have enough money set aside to pay the lease payments and break even, and then when the TIF money starts rolling in, that comes right about the time that we run out of money that we have in reserves, so there's no bonding required. But nobody thinks it's gonna be 14 million after talking to the 292 and JLG Architects. We're thinking it's significantly more than that, but the MOU does say 14 million. So the basic premise of the MOU can't be met. And I don't think that that should be glossed over. This is going to require additional funding from some source to make it work. And I mean, if it all pencils out into something that we can afford as a community, then that's fantastic. But we have to know that, and I don't want to claim success at such an early stage. We want the information to be factored in so that we get the right product, a sustainable product that isn't going to flood, and the city can afford to maintain going forward in the future. And so that's what I'm concerned about, is we don't have room to subsidize a couple $100,000 towards a beautiful new facility. No matter how beautiful it is, we just don't have a couple extra $100,000 to subsidize. So that's important information to know. And I guess what I'm hearing from you, Dick, and I do trust you, I think our wellness center turned out great. It's fantastic. It's an amenity worth moving to Watertown for, and I want the ice arena to be that as well. And we need to go through the proper steps to make sure that we're making the right decisions, and we don't want to cut the wrong corners when it comes time. So I'm not too concerned about, I mean, you just pretty much said they're going to remove the fill.
Right.
So then I feel better.
Yeah.
Because I know that it's, that I don't need to see the soil report
Right.
if we're removing it.
Right.
Then it doesn't matter. But I'm glad you're on board. I think that's going to help us get the facility that everybody wants, and one that will earn us money like the Wellness Center does.
Yep.
Councilman Lallam?
The MOU that was put in place on that is essentially it's a safeguard for all parties involved. Financially speaking, if it gets to the point where it's something that the city can't afford, we either have to go back and come up with either additional funding through outside sources or through, if we have to bond, we have to bond. And at the end of the day, I mean, we're going to have to go through the same process no matter what. We got to figure out what we want for a building, how it's going to function, and then have to come up with some pricing at the end of that report either way. So whether that is through the MOU or we end up, not using an MOU and having to bond it separately, I mean, that's something that we have to decide as a community what we want to do with it. So, I mean, we can throw out numbers, whatever I saw 22 million, I think, in the paper. That I don't know where that number came from. I haven't been told $22 million. I've seen 12 million, I've seen 14 million. I mean, I don't know, I would assume it's somewhere between there. I mean, we could say 30 million if we really wanted to. It doesn't mean it's going to come in at $30 million. But at the end of the day, the city has to decide if that's what they need and if they're willing to spend that money to do that, and including our taxpayers that are here. We're talking about potentially bonding that and using money from second penny sales tax, which comes in from not just people that are from Watertown, but people outside of Watertown. At the end of the day, we have to decide what we can afford, what it's going to be, and how it's going to work for years to come. I mean, that's the thing that we've talked about as an ICE committee is this is a 50-year facility or longer. I mean, you don't typically get to build an ice arena every 5 to 10 years. Obviously, as we've been trying to do this for the last 20, this is something that has to be done right. So whether that's 14 million or it pushes closer to the $22 million, at the end of the day, we have to do what's right for our community. And if that's to spend additional money, that's to spend additional money. If it's fundraise additional money, then that's what we need to do. So the MOU is supposed to help us get to that point and move forward. So, I mean, we can pick it apart all we want to, but we haven't even got to the nuts and bolts of a facility yet as to whether that MOU is going to work for all parties involved. And it needs to work for all parties involved, not just the city.
So I'd second that in terms of the process. Something we'll set up with the architect contract is do it in steps. Get through the concept design, get some pricing, and then you'll have a better idea, and then get through schematic design, do pricing, and have it so we can stop at any point. because these projects have a way of, to start with, it's that snarly stage we're in right now where everybody bumps into everybody and all that. Then, once it starts to get real numbers on saying this is what it is, and it'll start coming down to a range, that the range is 14 to 16 or 18 to 20, whatever it is. And you can go very inexpensive on these facilities. You can make them, so they're basically a barn with a sheet of ice in it, but you're going to have problems with it. So that's where we got to do is figure out where your comfort level is going up from there.
Mayor, over here. Speaking of the snarly stage of the process, at one point, I believe it was the meeting shortly after the March 29th approval, the council gave general consensus to going out to seeking a manager for the facility. Is that now or later?
I think that should be, if we were to go on and just, if this thing is full steam ahead, then I would say it's probably within the next 60 to 90 days. You start talking to people on that, and there's a lot of approaches. There's management companies that come in that will sort of coach along the city. There's other ones that will take it over completely and take, for example, the YMCA is an example of someone that would manage like a wellness center. They take over and they run it and they take the financial responsibility on it. So you've got models like that, and you've got other ones where you just hire them as a manager. But I think we like bringing them in early on because they usually got a lot of experience on these things, and it's all about how do you design this thing so you can maximize revenue.
All right, is there anybody that hasn't spoken that wants to? Councilman Vilhar?
I just like to touch on something that Adam just said. This is a community decision. Yes, the 10 of us represent the community, but we're not the end all and be all in this discussion. I mean, if we make a decision based upon the information that we have that the community is not like, this is not taken out of the hands of the people. That can be referred to a vote, and I would welcome that. We had the same situation happen with the Wellness Center, and the vote was overwhelmingly in support. I sense it would be the same way with the ICE facility if it got that, but that is the people's prerogative to challenge any decision that we might make along the way.
Right, Councilman Hoyer?
And I just wanted to be clear again, I don't think anyone's trying to pick it apart. I don't think that's the point of the questions. It's really just trying to get some answers for some people that have been asking questions. It's not meant to poo-poo it or bring it down or anything like that. I think it's just bringing us a little more clarity, that's all. Because a few people in the community feel like they've just been kind of in the dark. And I know it's just part of the process. At this point, like you said, there's so many parts moving at the moment. And I'm curious, are there mechanisms where we can use a TIF and then bond on top of that? Rapid City earmarked 2% on their sales tax, specifically on liquor and restaurant sales that they put directly towards the operation and maintenance of Rushmore Plaza. Like, there's a lot of creative solutions to it. I hope we don't have to do an additional tax, but I'm just saying there's options out there to make it happen. I think we all want to see it too. So,
Mayor?
Councilman Lallam?
To Councilman Hoyer's point there, I think you'd have to look at all options depending on what the price tag comes in at. I mean, if you really want to do the right facility, you have to figure out what you're willing to sacrifice as a community. Is it a certain portion of your tax, that comes in? I mean, that's what you have to make. And those are a tough decision that you have to make as community and as community leaders. You have to make that decision. At the end of the day, we don't know until we get people that start putting out bids as to what that's going to be. As far as people, having questions, I welcome that they have questions. Send them to us so that they can have it. Don't go through the PO and, claim this and that and whatever, but, without asking a single person that was on that committee as to what the problems potentially are. Come ask. We hired Dick after a meeting with him so he could help us work through those problems as a community. We don't want to have those issues going forward, and it's nothing against J&J Earthworks or Craig Development either. We want to make sure that our community is protected, that we can have the best facility that we can for what we can afford to build, plain and simple. Hi, Beth, are you waving? Okay.
Go
No,
ahead.
I just want to make a comment because I think everything here is right. But as far as the comments that are being made, and that's a good point, people need to ask, but sometimes they don't know exactly what to ask. You know, they don't know, they have that concern, and then they're not like, they're texting us or emailing us, they don't know what to ask. And that's why I like something like this, where all the information comes out, you get the presentation, we get to ask our questions, and hopefully we're asking questions on the behalf of the people who've talked to us. So I want to make sure we continue to do this, because sometimes it's not a matter of them coming to us, it's them not knowing what to ask, and then we answer their questions by doing things like this. So this is a good process that we're going through right now. So I think this is really important, that there's the give and take, so.
Councilman Roby.
Beth, I agree. And I think that what you'll probably see going forward is even if it's just a brief update, but on meetings going forward, I would see that. But now that Dick's on board, the fun part really kind of starts. We're going to start seeing some neat things happen. Mayor, if I may, I have a question for Heath, if I could. Maybe just explain where we're at behind the scenes at the city, because we just approved the plat at the Planning Commission, because that's the question I'm getting. What's the process internally that goes forward at this point? Could you maybe just update us on that?
Yes, absolutely, Councilman Roby. So, again, if you look at the overarching project from a subdivision standpoint, not just the ice arena or the lot that the ice arena is going on, we're carrying that through just like any other subdivision in the city. There was a concept and preliminary plan phase that were previously gone through and approved, in which we review the right-of-way configurations, the lot configurations, some drainage data, information like that, like we do for every other subdivision in the community. So those processes have been followed and completed already. Now we're at the stage where the developer has presented a plat for filing for what they're calling Phase 1 of the Lakes at Willow Creek. And that Phase 1 is the one that was referenced earlier in the discussion, where the plat has been approved by the Planning Commission. Now, as we know, with every plat, we get a development agreement with that plat that gives the city assurances that more or less that the public infrastructure is going to be built in a certain manner that meets the minimum criteria and the engineering design standards. Every development agreement sometimes has a few little nuances to it and some uniqueness to it depending on what's going on. This one very well may have that, but that is being drafted as we speak. So that plat was slated to go on the agenda for tonight's council meeting for council's approval, but we were missing the final draft of that development agreement along with that soils report that I referenced earlier for the public rights-of-way. I needed those two documents before staff could bring that plat forward to council for their consideration. So we are on track to see that information given to us in amount of time where it's reviewable before the June 21st council meeting. So we're anticipating seeing that plat before council on June 21st. Once that plat and development agreement are approved and the construction plans have all the information we need for them, the developer is able to go and construct away as far as the public infrastructure is concerned. And at a certain point in the construction process, they're also able to start pulling building permits on those platted lots. And so that's in a rough cap of what the subdivision process looks like and where we're at in this one in particular. As far as the ice arena process, I just add this too, just for the community's level of comfort. I myself personally am no stranger to projects like this. I came from a community that had a lot of structural development. We had a lot of joint projects, mainly with public agencies like the county and the college that was in our community. But we built student housing in a partnership with the technical college in my last job I was at. We built a new fire station in collaboration with the county in that same community. We had an $8 million outdoor softball complex, very elaborate, well put together project. All those three projects ran a CMAR process, a construction manager at risk. So bringing Dick on board with the Tegra Group has been a very it's brought a high level of comfort to me to have that. In my last place of appointment, I had 5 licensed engineers working under me. I don't have that here. So bringing a consultant on with this level of knowledge, I have not been part of Target Field project. Dick has been. So he brings all the more to this team to help ensure that this thing goes right. So all I wanted to stress was not only through our consultant, but also through staff experience, we're going to do everything we need to do as staff to make sure that this thing's being checked off each step of the way. make sure that the regulations are followed, that things are safeguarded and designed in an appropriate manner that's not going to compromise the quality of this public facility or even any of the private development out there for that matter, just like any other subdivision that we would review. So.
Councilman Holeen?
Thank you. Knowing that the presentation is almost over, but I did want to stress a couple different things that were part of the debate. But nobody, to my knowledge, has prematurely declared success on this project. Even in that March 29th meeting, I don't think I ever said this is over. I said what we'd have is a memorandum of understanding to move forward, to find success. So, but I do know one thing, that to attack it from a different point of view, to attack the facility, to just unduly place attacks on it is a certain recipe for failure. So I would encourage people to try to find success. But I do want to address two things with the soil. With anyone who has legitimate questions for the soil, both Dick and Jamie Andrews and Jesse Craig are all here. They can address that issue. I know that I have talked with them, and I think Dick is the one who said there's nothing in this site that is unduly alarming compared to any other large site like this. And you can ask him yourself, and you can ask Jamie Andrews and Jesse Craig as well. So there's no reason to curtail or derail this project. And also the other thing that I know is in regarding to cost, yes, the material costs are going up. But if history proves us one thing with hockey, with an ice arena in Watertown, is the cost is never going to get cheaper than what it is today. There's an old saying that the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, and the next best time is today. I would liken that to the ice arena in Watertown. Yes, we could have done this years ago. We didn't. But what we do is we have an opportunity to do it now. So I would encourage everyone to be part of the solution, to move this forward. And if you have any legitimate questions, rather than attack this facility and burden it with undue expectations that not only possibly derails it from completion, but also then burdens it with a negative public stigma going forward. That's unfair to the community. So if you have any questions, please do ask them now.
Thank you. And when I asked you in my office the questions, you told me you couldn't answer because you had stepped down from your leadership role. And, you know, it depends on who you ask. That's the answer you gave me. I was asking you, and you didn't give me answers. But if now you're saying you're going to give answers, I would encourage everyone to ask the committee, and also please include the professional staff members in the committee from here on out. We have an engineer on our staff. He can be very helpful. He's very knowledgeable in project management. So I would feel much better knowing that he's included in the meetings, not just included by asking him questions here and there, but he's part of the process. The attorney, please include the attorney, and please include the finance officer and the park and rec director. And I'll feel a lot better knowing that there is a support group available. And I am, you know, extremely happy that we've hired Dick. That does take away a lot of the fears, knowing that he's going to insist that we follow the due process to get the facility that we want and that we can afford. But it is a team effort. It isn't something that a handful of council members can tackle on their own. That's what we have staff for.
Mayor,
So.
I would like to say they're here right now, so you can ask them if they were part of the process, if they have anything to contribute. But I do want to address one thing, because you have said it multiple times in public, including tonight. Yes, that was a private conversation. I did say that I was stepping back publicly. You are neglecting to say the second part of what I said. I am stepping away publicly because I did not want this to be used as a political campaign agenda item that would derail the city of Watertown. This is bigger than any one of us up at this council. The only person guaranteed to come back here is Glenn Vilhauer. All of us may be gone, or some of us might not be here. This is bigger than any one of us. And that's what I said to you, is I did not want this to be used as a political attack against either me or anyone else, because this is for the good of Watertown. Very seldom do you have the chance to do something that will be good for the quality of life, that will improve the life for citizens all over Watertown, particularly the thousands of kids who will love that opportunity. And almost never do you get the chance to solve a problem like that and pair it with tens of millions of dollars of economic development. So I was willing to step back and not use it as a campaign tool for my advantage. But
you had already done that by announcing success. You used the word success.
When did I say that?
At the 29th. We've been struggling with this, and
I think what I said is that we have a memorandum of understanding that will take us forward in the process.
I'm fine with that. I don't want it to be a political football either. I want to get the right ice arena for our community, and that's going to take rolling up our sleeves and everybody working together.
But I want to stress that you're neglecting to say the second part of whenever you're attacking me for stepping back away from the Rice Committee. That was not true. I was doing it to protect the city of Watertown and this project because it's bigger than either one of us.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
So I just have a question, Reed, because you called it an attack. I'm just asking questions from the public. I don't think anyone's trying to derail anything. So why are we calling these attacks? They're just questions.
And questions are legitimate. And that's why I'm saying we're here. Ask any question you want.
Right, but you just called them attacks, Reed. Nobody's attacking it. We're all for this. We're trying to just ask the questions.
And I just want to encourage everyone to remember why this received unanimous approval from the council. Because it was a very good proposal.
Right. No one's against that. You just yourself called this an attack. Nobody's attacking this.
Right. Okay, let's call a truce. I think we're making good progress. I feel good about it. We have a path forward. I think everybody wants this to be successful. So let's just take it from there. And I'm going to move on.
Is there any member of the public
right.
that would like to talk? I mean, we rambled on for 45 minutes, so do they want to talk at all?
Could I see a show of hands of who would like to speak on this issue? Got one? Just one? Two? Okay. Just a couple minutes each.
This on? Okay. Eric Scott, formerly president of the Watertown Hockey Association and just concerned citizen and developer. So I just really am here to reiterate, I've been before this council, or this body rather, a couple of times, and I just want to reiterate our support from Watertown Hockey Association. And I can't speak for the figure skating club, but we're eager to work together to make this a great investment for our community. And I've been of the mindset, and most of the feedback I've gotten from the community, public in general, is build it right. And I've been, again, a big proponent of all we need from a user standpoint is a couple of sheets of ice. But done right, I believe this can be an asset for the community that brings in income and provides a great quality of life initiative and doesn't have to be just for those users groups. And we're ready, willing, and able to do our part to make sure this can be a great asset to the community of Watertown. So thank you all for everything you've done, for the continued support, and thank you to the committee and everybody that's been a part of it. An exciting proposal to move this project forward and move our community forward. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Eric. Vince, did you want to speak? Typical lawyer, he wants to hear the other person so he can respond.
Hi, I'm Marcy Cole. I'm president of the Watertown Figure Skate Club. I would just echo what Eric said. We are excited about this project. We want to work with the Watertown Hockey Association. We want to see this rink happen. We've talked about it for so many years, and we want to see it happen. We're willing to work together, and we hope you guys are too, and get this project done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Vince Foley. I'm the president of the Hockey Association. So you're probably wondering what's an old guy like me doing being the president of the Hockey Association. I'm not as old as Don, but we played together up in Highland Park back in the 70s when it started. George Mace kicked in and we were able to get a rink built in 1987. 1987. I often made a comment as my kids were growing up that we're going to get a rink in Watertown before my son graduates from high school. I was talking about Andy. He graduated from Notre Dame in 2014. I wasn't talking about Tommy. Build it now. All these issues are issues concerning heading for home base. We're still at bat heading out to first. Mr. Hoyer's questions were well taken, well done, and maybe he doesn't want me to say this, but he and I had a heartfelt conversation about what is right, and I saw him come to support this. Don't make this a political football. He hasn't. Nobody else should.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Do appreciate the support. What? One more? Okay, one more slide.
Gotta get to the end. I mean, sitting up here, lawyers get the last word. Yeah. Well, I'll just go to the last slide. I think Reed wants to take that one.
I want to thank everyone for being part of this process. I think it was invaluable for the community and for the council to know what's going to go forward. Just want to stress, we have committed to the Memorandum of Understanding. We want to continue with that process. That is going to be the mechanism that will eventually, hopefully, guarantee success for us. Keep the momentum. We have never been closer to solving this long-standing problem for the community. And we have never had an opportunity to do it the way that we are trying to do it here, where we pair it with an enormous economic development opportunity. Together, we can generate success. We have 4 entities here that were all part of the MOU, committed to success. Everyone up here is still committed to success. I always just say, there are lots of ways to say no to a project, especially as big as this. But let's be the people who find the solution. Let's work towards the solution. And just keep in mind the goal. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for coming. Okay, we're going to move on. That's the third last comment.
Just the last comment on this whole deal. I mean, this is not just for hockey or for figure skating. This is also for our community. I don't want anyone in the community to think that it's not for the open skate. I know there's been talk about a junior league team and things of that nature. It is for the entire community, so that we, as Park and Rec and figure skating and hockey, can utilize this for years to come. So, thank you.
All right. Okay, Julie, you're up next.
Well, this will be relatively easier than the last.
Okay, let me
Little bit.
say the title for the record. We are talking about the first reading of ordinance number 21-23 to supplement the 2021 budget for various departments and projects and line item transfers. And there's no action on this item today. And Julie Knutsen's here from the CVB to talk about one of the line items, but there are several. So, okay, go ahead, Julie.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor just said, Julie Knutsen, the Executive Director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I had just a very short presentation, but I'll just go through it real quickly. At the beginning of this year, due to COVID and just not knowing what the BBB was going to do and what kind of performance we were going to see, there was a reduction to what we had requested for our budget. I just wanted to go over a few things with you all so you know kind of what we're up to, and going into 2022 what our needs will be. And I know with the change in the city management structure, budgeting will be a little bit different as well. And so that presents a few challenges for us too, because we are looking out into the future so far, trying to acquire business for Watertown. But in 2022, some of the things we have coming up will be adding to the CVB footprint and business model. We are putting together a sports alliance. We're also putting together a new position for marketing and sales. Also, we're bidding meetings and events and group business 5 years in advance. We lost over $1 million in meeting business, and that's just what we could count. It was much, much more than that. So we're trying to make up for lost time a bit. And with a lot of those groups, once you miss a year, they just go on to their next destination. Maybe they're regional and they go from state to state. So we wouldn't get a lot of those groups back for 3, 4, 5 or more years when it's our turn, and then we would be bidding against other, say, South Dakota cities. So also business retention and honoring our current commitments. We've had a lot of interest in Watertown. Our website views are up over 200%. So people are excited to come to South Dakota. So we want to make sure that we're out there and we're asking people to come here and groups to come here and spend their money. We want to make sure that we can maintain the level of hospitality and customer service that we're known for. We usually have, I know I've always invite the city council, and I know the mayor's been to a few events that we do, but we don't, it's no holds barred. Nobody rolls out the red carpet like Watertown, and we do some great things for the groups that come in, and we hear about it for months and years afterwards. And so we really don't want to drop the level of our customer service and hospitality. Updating and maintaining our website and digital assets. Our virtual brick and mortar is outdated. That's going to be a big line item for us next year. I also wanted to just let everybody know, in case you didn't hear, but Watertown has won the North Star Athletic Association golf and softball championship, their Division League championships, beginning next year in 2022 and 2023. So we officially will have 5 division championships being played in the neutral site of Watertown, men's and women's basketball and volleyball Super 6. Also the men's and women's golf championship, and also the softball championships. They have a new commissioner, and his intention is to have 5-year contracts for these, which is a pretty good, solid piece of business for Watertown that we never had before. And I just want to, since we're just got done talking about the hockey, not the hockey arena, the ice arena. When Roger Turnus was here, I had Park and Rec meet me out at the Premier Ball Fields. And Watertown's facilities, their sports facilities, are second to none when it comes to the Division I and Division II sports. These kids don't play in places like this ever. They were so impressed with Premier Fields, very impressed with the golf course, and it was early. I mean, it wasn't super green, it wasn't super nice yet. But this is something that came out of a a 30-person spring meeting in May for 2 or 3 years running. And the hospitality was so far above all of the other places that they went to that they wanted to bring some of their championships here. And it just worked out. And now we're looking at 5 different championship games for 5 years. So the sports facilities don't produce revenue like this overnight, but we can't give up on it because there's potential out there, and there's a potential to bring in some of these big groups. We are going to be, with the hotel that's going up with the ice arena, we're going to be close to 1,000 rooms. That's a complete game changer for Watertown in being able to accommodate some of these bigger groups. So don't lose sight of the big picture. That's a really important thing. Venue space is huge. Watertown does sports really well. We're a sports community. That's one of the things we excel at in the visitor industry. So now back to budgets and why we're different. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. Most group business is procured 2 to 5 years in advance. Marketing and show planning tracks 6 to 15 months in advance. I know that we aren't going to get our budget okayed until November of this year. I just want you all to know that that puts us in a little bit of a pinch because we need to plan our travel, plan our sales, and everything so far in advance. The visitor industry is always working into the future. We don't plan, I know the city, when you're going to fill potholes or you're going to do something like that, it's a lot easier to do the math. We don't know who's going to want to come here, and we don't want to lose that business. So just to be patient with us when we come, and maybe we need a little bit more money, or to understand that planning is really part of what we need to do. And it's really hard to wait until November to know even what we have to spend. And if there's not a way around that, that's fine. We'll just have to figure it out, but as long as we all work together. The commitment that we're looking for when we're bidding on things is the first thing that we need to know is the number of hotel rooms, which is growing. The venue logistics, which, we've got great venues. We just need to know their availability and desired dates. And then availability of funding assistance, amenities and services provided. And that's at the point when all those things fit, we get a commitment. And that's what happened with NSAA, and it happens with different meetings and conventions all the time. And so we want to just keep bringing business to Watertown. But we're growing, and so we're going to have some growing pains, and it does cost money to bring these folks in, especially when they're outside organizations and they're not like your local sports associations and things like that are putting things on. There's always a cost to that for us. And by the way, I just wanted you to know that in 2019, which is our benchmark year, 2020 wasn't horrible, but it was just different. For every dollar that you guys all gave the CVB, the ROI was nearly $10. So for every dollar you gave me, I gave you almost $10 back, $9.71. $6.47 of that $10 went to the city's general and capital funds for things like potholes, salaries, flowers, and to improve our facilities. So it's a great partnership. I appreciate your support, but I just wanted to give you a rundown. So if the money that the money that came back out of the budget that we requested, if there's a way that we can have that back, or be able to use that would be great. And then going forward, we've submitted our budget to the finance office for next year, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you, Julie. So just to be clear, the budget request for 2021 was made last summer, and $350,000 was requested, and the city granted $295,000. So it's the $55,000 difference that Julie is requesting that we put back in the budget. We did say we didn't know what COVID was going to do to our economy, but we did say we would revisit as time went on. Time's gone on, and our revenues have greatly exceeded our expectations, and we should be in line to cover this just fine. So we should be able to do this financially. Councilman Roby?
Thank you, Mayor. Just in support of what Julie said, I am the CVB liaison, and that is indeed how it kind of rolled out. Julie, thanks. You've done a lot of good work. You've done a lot of good things that have been brought to this community, North Star being one of them. So that's appreciated. I also want to reiterate that you heard the ROI on dollars, but also to highlight the fact that what they work on today shows up a year or 2 years down the road. So if we are falling short now, we pay for it later. So just in support of what she said.
Right, and Julie shouldn't have to beat her own drum. I have witnessed the same responses that she's talking about from those who are bringing tournaments here. They love it. And what she's saying is absolutely true, and there is a good return on our investment. So, thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
And I'll back that up too for Julie. I mean, just as somebody in the restaurant industry, the impacts of these tournaments are huge for our community. So appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
It really does have a massive impact on every aspect of our economy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Councilman Albertson.
I'll reiterate that a little bit also. I've helped with the North Star groups when they come in. And, you know, we always get accused of going to Chicago and looking in the buildings. When these young men and women come to Watertown for the North Star and they go into just the arena, for instance, they're in the high school arena and they're going, we've never been in a place that'll seat 5,000 people. Our arenas seat 200 or 300. So they really are thrilled to come to Watertown, and they do bring a lot of people. And these 5 tournaments that she's talking about, golf, I'm not so sure. But the others, I mean, people just don't follow golf because...
Right, they're not going to have the following and the crowds. But the last NSAA basketball tournament that we had, I think you were there,
right.
Mayor and Dan, you were there. The crowds were great, and actually the BBB was up 10% in February, and that was 2020. Yeah. And that really saved us, actually.
Yes. Yes.
And we missed those 2 tournaments that they took back to the college campuses, but they were anxious to come back here. And actually the student experience is really what sells that. That's what the coaches want, that's what the ADs want, and that's what the commissioner wants. They want those kids to have an extraordinary experience. And, you know, we add things every year to try to make it a little more fun. And some of the comments we've gotten from those kids that it seems like such a big time tournament and things like that. And Dan, I can't go without saying too that the impression that they walk in and see in that arena is 150% Dan Albertson. So,
thank you. All right, we do have more than just that request on this agenda item, and so I'm going to ask the Finance Officer, Kristen Bobzien, to explain the rest of the request.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so we're looking at this ordinance. What we have going on is this is the first reading of a budget supplement. Everything on here except for what Julie just presented on, the council has discussed prior and has kind of given the go-ahead. So I'm just going to kind of run over what they mean. If there's any questions, I can try to help cover that. But when we look at the first item, it's $95,000. That's going to go to ICAP. That was for the presentation that was given regarding some of the kitchen equipment. And then the 2 between the fire department and the ambulance, because they have that 80-20 split on the salary, is granting the the fire department the extension on their temporary salary till the end of 2021. The $55,000 is what Julie just covered. And then under the capital improvement fund, the land, that was to purchase the little piece of land off Highway 81. So that's to give me authority to up the budget there. And then under the recreational facility improvement, the $1,073,500, it's a combination of a couple of things. $1,005,000 for the city park additional funding, not city park. Wow, downtown park. Okay. That's to supplement that. And then $68,500 of that is to help supplement the ADA park that's going to go in. When we look at the second page of this is actually for the line transfers. In the general fund, Rob with the street department has actually asked that we could take some of his budget that was used for the dump trucks. They came in a little bit less, and he did purchase 1 pickup, and he thinks if he transfers this, he'll be able to get another pickup for the street department. I know Heath is in there. I don't know if Rob is in the chamber or not. If the council has any more questions, they could ask Rob or Heath that. And then the last part, the $10,000, that's to actually help cover again that ADA park. So Terry, between all the donations and then the supplement and kind of getting everything handled to cover that ADA park, we're going to do a $10,000 transfer of some other capital improvement funds. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Otherwise, this is the first reading and it'll come back to the council at the next meeting.
All right, Councilman Lallam.
Rob, you might as well step up there.
You thought you were hiding.
So you guys purchased a pickup currently, and then you're trying to purchase another one. What are they going to be utilized for, Rob?
Right now, our fleet of pickups is in dire need of replacement. So we do have one truck actually getting an engine put in it right now. We're trying to limp stuff along, but yeah, it will be to replace one of these other trucks. The truck we're getting right now that we ordered a month or two ago will replace a 1997 Ford with 98,000 miles, and we're just spending a lot of money keeping it going. So that'll replace that truck, and then we would get another pickup, and we would add it to this fleet and still keep the others right now. Because there's a lot of times
what are
we're
they
short.
utilized for typically? Hauling people or
Both.
material,
Our
or-
patch crews, actually this year we're trying to have 2 crews again. We had 1 crew last year, but our patch crews use pickups a lot. We always have our hot box hooked up to one all the time.
Yep.
And then if there's any flooding or raining going on, we send out 2-man crews throughout town to make sure we don't have any drains blocked up and flooding people. So, yeah, we do have, currently our newest truck is a 2009, and that has 90,000 miles on it. So we're definitely using them. And a lot of the trucks we have are recycled from other departments. So.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
Just prefacing, totally in support, but I'm just kind of curious for everyone's knowledge. What does our maintenance program look like? Do we do like preventative maintenance on the trucks and everything?
Yeah.
Oil changes at the recommended times, all that sort of thing?
We do a lot of that in-house on rainy days if we can. If it's something that's close to or is overdue, we'll take them in. Generally, all of our big trucks and our loaders and stuff like that, we try to do in-house because that gets quite expensive to have a mechanic come down and do that type of stuff. But sometimes local places will do oil changes on our pickups and stuff like that through them, because that's reasonable.
All right, thank you. Heath?
Madam Mayor, I'll just plug my support in for this. Rob obviously talked to me about this too before approaching Kristen with the idea. And I just want to remind the council that the budgetary money that is being utilized for another pickup does come from cost savings from Rob shopping around, looking at the bids that we purchased our other equipment off of this year, finding some cost savings, and actually trim back some of what he had anticipated buying on some of the systems and pieces of equipment, and as a cost savings due to a change in the plans. And so I felt it was more than appropriate to go ahead and use these leftover funds from the 21 budget to allocate towards a new pickup. And as far as the pickup usage, he cited the newest one they have is an 09. If you think back, that's a good handful of years ago now already. And just kind of like the street facility, Rob is making do with a lot of older pieces of equipment, older facilities, and he's doing a great job at it. But I just want to express my support for the street division of Public Works to continue to build those fleet pieces of equipment up to an updated level that they deserve to have. A lot of times for instance, the operations are impacted negatively because he doesn't have a crew cab pickup. They're sharing a regular cab or a double cab. So little things like that go a long way in gaining efficiencies for their operations as well. So it's not just about driving a new truck, but also about the operations and gaining efficiencies too. So.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Any questions on any of the other line items? Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Where are we? I think we're on item A. Application for a new retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license to North Shore Inc., doing business as North Shore Inc. at 100 North Lake Drive. And I will ask I guess I can take a motion for approval. Have a motion by Mantee and a second by Rademski, and I will ask the finance officer, Kristen Bobzien, to tell us about this one.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. For both of these, A and B, it's the same. It's North Shore doing business as North Shore Incorporated. One would be for your malt beverage farm wine license, and then the other's for the wine and cider license. Both of these are for the on-off sale. Currently, what they hold is an actual retail on-sale liquor license, and with that license, there's no ability to sell any alcoholic beverages off sale, which means like a 6-pack or a 12-pack. So that would give them that ability with both of these licenses. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer them.
Thank you, Kristen. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone here that would like to speak about this? So please come forward or state permission to speak if you're online. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and entertain council discussion. Any comments, council, or questions? All right, hearing none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, item B is application for a new retail on-off sale wine and cider license to North Shore Inc., doing business as North Shore Inc. at 100 North Lake Drive. And I have a motion by Lallam and a second by Albertson. And Kirsten already talked about this one, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak about this? Please approach the microphone or say permission to speak. Hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Council, any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item C has been removed. Item D is renewal of alcoholic beverage license for the period of July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. I have a motion by Manti and a second by Lallam, and I'll ask the Finance Officer, Kristen, to tell us about it, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is just one of the last renewals that we're kind of waiting on. I think there is actually one more that we'll try to get to the June 21st, but just a standard renewal. So nothing, if anybody has questions, I can try to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Council? No questions. All those in favor signify by saying, oh wait, do we need a public hearing on this?
No, not for the renewal.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, this next one, we need a public hearing. Item E is application for a special retail malt beverage and wine license to the Watertown Area Chamber of Commerce from 6:00 p.m. on Thursday, July 15, 2021 until 11:00 p.m. on Saturday, July 17, 2021 for Cookin' on Kempesca.
So moved.
Have a motion by Rademski. Second by Vilhauer. And I'll ask Kristen to tell us about it, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is kind of just a standard special malt beverage and wine license for Cookin' on Kempesca. I think it looks like it's going to be the same setup as last year. Other than that, if there's any questions, I can try to answer them.
Okay, and we did advertise a public hearing for this one, so I'll go ahead and
We
open
did.
that public hearing at this time. Is there anyone that would like to speak about Cookin' on Kempesca? Online, just say permission to speak. Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing. Council, any questions or comments? Councilman Vilhauer.
Kristen or Matt, I know I ask this question every year, but I'm going to ask it again. Does this allow consumption? Okay, are they designated as far as where they can sell and then where it can be consumed at the park out there?
Yes, the description on the application would limit them to the boundaries in which they can sell, and also where that alcohol that's sold can be consumed. Now if there's people that obviously bring their own alcohol to the park and hang out at their campsite and stuff like that. So, but legally, the alcohol that's sold pursuant to the special event license needs to be consumed in the same footprint.
Okay. And never been a problem. I know I was involved with the chamber for a lot of years, and never a problem that we've experienced out there.
I guess I haven't been around long enough to know of any real problems. If anybody else has aware of any. I know that, obviously with the 4th of July, we recently took the action to remove firework from the park. That's
Sure.
a separate issue, of course, but.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Police chief's shaking his head, no problem, so. That's reassuring. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item F is second reading of ordinance number 21-16, an amendment to chapter 24.06 subdivision procedure of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown regarding the inclusion of groundwater elevations in preliminary plans and construction plans. I have a motion by Hoyer and a second by Rademski, and I'll ask the Public Works Director, City Engineer Heath Von Eye to tell us about this, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, as a second reading, I gave a brief introduction in the last meeting at first reading about the necessity to add some language back in, at least from staff's perspective, regarding the subdivision regulations. There's two specific sections in there that we'd be amending with this ordinance. That is the preliminary plan requirements and the construction plan requirements, both found in Chapter 24 of the city ordinances, which are the subdivision regulations. This is specific to the groundwater elevation being identified on both of those plans, and then ensuring that the lowest recommended floor elevations for the structures are at least 2 feet above those observed groundwater elevations. This was something that has been in our ordinances in the past, and if you recall, a few months back, we updated Chapter 24 to, excuse me, to create some more streamlined development review processes, and we inadvertently didn't keep this language plugged in. It was going to get moved to a different section, and staff, it just kind of slipped through the cracks, and we didn't get it put back in that section. So we're just cleaning that up and adding it there now. And with any questions, I'd be glad to help answer them.
All right, thank you, Heath. Councilman Hoyer?
Heath, I mentioned it last time, but is there still an appetite for making a database of what we find for readings on these so we can kind of have a general idea?
Yeah, there's definitely an appetite for that. And something we can keep in mind, Councilman Hoyer, on how to accomplish that. We have our pending community development software in the works. As we incorporate that, there may be an easy way to do that with that software. We try to reduce or eliminate redundancies, so if we can get it all into one software like that, that'd be ideal. But even if not, monitoring that through our GIS software would be not that daunting of a task either.
Okay.
Just takes staff time to do that, of course.
Yeah, I think it would just really help us out, but I think it would also really help out developers too, to kind of have a general idea of what they're getting into in some of these spots.
Absolutely. It's a great idea.
Yes, good idea. Anyone else? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item G is the second reading of ordinance number 21-17, an amendment to chapter 21.90 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown, amending the definition for bar or tavern. I'll say motion by Hoyer and second by Rademski. Thank you. And I will ask the City Attorney, Matt Roby, to tell us about this one, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This was a ordinance amendment project that was kind of spearheaded by Councilman Hoyer. Essentially, what this ordinance change would do, it would strike from the definition of bar tavern off-sale alcoholic beverage sales. And so an establishment that was only intending to sell off-sale alcohol would no longer need to receive the conditional use permit for bar tavern. And this was approved by the Plan Commission on May 6th.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilman Vilhauer?
I know when not this particular change came before us, but something that had the same net effect several years ago, and I believe Target was a specific location that was being looked at that time. I know we had our police department weigh in with their thoughts on it. I have talked to Chief Tim Toomey prior to the meeting. He has shared some comments to me via email, but I guess I would like to have Chief Toomey just make a few comments from his perspective as to this change.
Thanks. Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor. We really don't see an issue with it. It is going to increase our enforcement action as far as law enforcement is concerned for compliance checks. You know, our concern is keeping alcohol out of the hands of the underage. So we would increase our compliance checks, but as far as the police department's point of view, we really don't have an opinion. So.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Anyone else? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh,
Aye.
Wait, I'm sorry, I did not open the public hearing. I don't think I did. So I'm going to open the public hearing now, and if anyone is here or online that wants to speak about this, this is the opportunity. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing, and now I will ask for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, I'm going to move these around. Item I is the second reading of ordinance number 21-21, an amendment to chapter 2.01, alcoholic beverages of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown. Is there a motion? Motion by Rademski, second by Manti. And I'll ask the city attorney to tell us about this one. Please, Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. This ties in a little bit with the action that was just approved by the council. Title 2, chapter or section 2.0102 governs the location where alcoholic beverage licenses can be established. And so what this amendment will do is require that an applicant obtain from the Community Development Division basically a certificate showing the finance office that the location in which they intend to operate is satisfactory for a alcoholic beverage license to operate. What this will also do is revise the subsection 1 here of this ordinance to state that essentially alcoholic beverage licenses can't be operated in residential districts. What that accomplishes for us is that previously that was the agricultural zone was listed, and that was going to pose an issue for us with the operation of a bar, tavern, restaurant at the airport. And then finally here, it does remove the reference to mayor and city council and leaves it to say just city council with the impending change in form of government.
All right, thank you. Are there any, I'm going to open the public hearing at this time. Is anyone here to speak about this issue or online? If so, please say permission to speak. See no one. I will close the public hearing and see if the council has any questions or concerns. Anyone? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, we're going to back up now to item H. Second reading of ordinance number 21-18, amendments to chapter 21.1002, residential height and placement regulations for accessory structures, chapter 21.12A1, agricultural district, chapter 21.28 C3, highway commercial district, chapter 21.32 I1, light industrial district, and chapter 21.90, definitions, pertaining to commercial kennels to the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown. I have a motion by Vilhauer. Second by Manti. And I will ask the Public Works Director, City Engineer Heath Von Eye to kick this one off for us. Please, Heath.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This action, of course, is specific to Chapter 21, the zoning ordinance of the city's code. The subsequent actions later on here in the meeting, I think the next one perhaps relates to Chapter 3, which is more specific to animal control. This was a joint effort then because of that between the Animal Control Board and the Planning Commission, along with community development staff and Matt from the legal side and how to update these ordinances. The amendments pertaining to Chapter 21 are specific to defining a commercial kennel. There was some ambiguous language in the previous ordinance that could have been interpreted whether you were talking about a private kennel in somebody's backyard or a kennel related to commercial activities for the breeding of dogs or the caring of dogs for long term. And so we realized we needed to clarify that. And that's really what these changes in all these sections of Chapter 21 are doing, is addressing and defining a commercial kennel and where they can be utilized throughout our zoning districts. The other main change that I will cite is that we're also adding in dog enclosures, and that would be the private instance, the people's backyards, dog enclosures. And with that, we're defining what that is, but also requiring that setbacks be met for those dog enclosures. And those setbacks would match any other accessory structure setbacks that we already defined in the ordinance for structures greater than 200 square feet. I just did want to note that that does add a layer of regulation for the Community Development Division to monitor and ensure that those dog enclosures are set back at those regulations. But aside from that, this is pretty well a housekeeping effort to clean up the language in Chapter 21.
All right, thank you. And this was passed by the Plan Commission. Was it unanimous?
Correct. At their May 6th meeting, Planning Commission recommended approval 5-0.
A lot of work has gone into this. Any questions or comments? Councilman Vilhauer?
Heath, without doing the going back and forth in the ordinances, what is the setback requirement for a structure greater than 200 square feet?
I believe the side yard is a 9-foot setback. In the rear yard, I'd defer to Brandy, who's online with us, if she could chime in on that.
Depends on the zone though, doesn't it? 6 feet in the R2A?
You're correct.
If it's less than, okay, Brandy's on.
So for accessory structures greater than 200 square feet, it is 9 feet for the rear yard. So these dog enclosures would adhere to the same setbacks as an accessory structure greater than 200 square feet.
Okay.
So it'd be 9-foot side yard, 9-foot rear yard.
Okay.
What about R2A? Is
I
it
think
6
that's
feet?
9.
6 feet if it's less than 70 feet, 75 feet of property width?
Let me check really quick. Sorry about that.
I thought the R2A had a shorter setback on the side.
So, yeah, that could be here. Yeah, so with the R2A district, you'd be looking at 6 feet or 10% of the total lot width.
And then the R1C is a little different too. So it follows the zone, whatever the zone is for, and it's a little different for some of the zones, but essentially following the same.
Okay, thank you.
I would just note too, kind of to rephrase it a little differently, if a home is built right up to the setback, and you desired a kennel of some sort, you could not build it on the side. You'd have to build it in the back.
Right. All right, I'm going to open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone here that would like to speak about this issue? You can please come and state your name. Oh, we have several. Why don't you come to the microphone and explain what your concern is, and our city attorney will tell you if it's the right one or not. State your name first, though, please.
Well, I'm just listening to these setbacks and can't be on the side, but I am prepared for the information on J, which is very similar to some. That might help me on this
Yes.
one. This is
Yes.
new to me.
I suspect you're here to talk about the number of dogs allowed.
That plus the setback, plus taking the word kennel out and replacing it with doghouse, so that two issues.
Yeah, so these were done in conjunction with each other because there was language in both Title 21 and Title 3 that needed to be changed at the same time. So
Okay.
You can either state your concern now or wait till the next item, but it is all kind of tied together.
Should I go ahead with
Yes,
what I planned
please.
for Jay?
Sure.
Okay, my husband and I are here to express our opposition to the recommended approval of ordinance 2119, amending section 3.0105 for multiple reasons. We feel the 5 dogs per house limit within the city of Watertown is way too high, and we are opposed to the elimination of the 50-foot setback. It seemed, but maybe that didn't occur. We go south in the winter, and when we returned from Florida in May of 2019, new neighbors were moving in next door, directly to our west. They moved in with 8 dogs and 1 cat, 3 big dogs, 5 corgis. We saw that they had 30-plus kennel sections leaning against the back of their garage wall, and their house is very close to ours. Their side yard is 5 feet from our patio. And so when we saw that, we were concerned that the new neighbors were going to be building a kennel right along behind that alcove, because there's a door from the garage that leads out there. So we called animal control, and they did contact them and shared with them the information, and at that time, they decided not to build a kennel. The kennel pieces are still all there. It didn't take long after May, when they moved in, that we had the issues with barking, running through our backyard, defecating, peeing on our patio. And I did go to an animal control board meeting at the police department in August of that year regarding those issues, and I relayed those to Greg Hofteaser. And he was just shocked. He said he didn't know there was no limit in Watertown, that somebody had bought that house with 8 dogs. And he did give them a call and said he didn't want those dogs using the vacant property behind their house, and asked if they were considering putting up a fence due to all the dogs. So before we left for Florida, that same year, the winter of 2019, they did ultimately put up a partial fence on our border, just on that one side, dividing our side yard from theirs. And before we left for the winter, we saw that they were attaching 4 kennel sections from that fence 5 feet from our patio to their house, and closing that alcove where the dogs could go in and out, but being very close. We again called animal control and were informed that this was a temporary fence. It would be taken down on Monday. They were going to the cities. Okay, so we went to Florida. We came back. It's back up. It had been up all winter. So this temporary kennel, not kennel, has become a temporary fence, has become a permanent fence. Called animal control. They said, sorry, it's legal. Your only options are, they can keep it up, are to call the police when the dogs bark. Okay. So we don't want to call the police every time the dogs bark, because that's every day. Okay. So we did deal with animal control probably 5-6 times. We dealt, finally, ultimately, the worst case more recently was they went out of town multiple days, had no one checking on the dog. They used to have somebody come and check, let them out, bring them back into the garage, which seems to be their doghouse now, or kennel, whatever you want to call it. And so intermittently, night and day, they were barking. The husband sleeps in a recliner due to a health issue and a hip issue. Intermittent doesn't help when it wakes you up, okay, because our houses are so close together. And so that's the first time we finally did. After living there almost 2 years, we finally did call the police. And they came out and they called him. They were out of town. So now, when they're gone, which was just recently again for multiple days this past week, but they have this man that comes over 2 or 3 times a day, lets them out of the garage to do their job, and puts them back. Well, to top it off, my husband was sitting on the patio, or the deck, very small deck, right outside of our dining room, and the dog started barking. And he had the guts to say, "You're harassing my dogs, get back in your house." Now, I respectfully request that the limit of dogs in the city be less than 5 and the setback stay at 50 and keep the word kennel, because now they're going to say their garage is a doghouse. That's fine. And they've still got that out there, and I don't care how often they run that sprinkler system, which is 2 to 3 times a day, just indicating how they have too many there to dilute. And in the summer when it's hot, it still stinks. And it's right next to our patio. And anytime anybody comes over, that's the mess we have to deal with. And I don't know what the solution is. I just know that 2 years, it's been a nightmare. And it only pertains to us, only affects us because of the proximity of our deck, our patio, our fire pit, our garden are all right 5 feet in from that border. And so I don't know if that, it looks like if this passes, we're going to never solve this problem. I just wanted to share that, and thank you. I hope they reconsider this, because it affects us. I know there aren't many people in Watertown who have more than 5 dogs in a private home where their houses are that close together. And by the way, that fence he's got in there is also against the covenants in River Ridge. But since we don't pay association fee, nothing gets done when people violate the covenants in River Ridge. So, sorry. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Roby?
Thank you, Mayor. You asked the question, or you made the comment I was just about to ask, and that is, if you're up in River Ridge, I know they do have covenants, and those covenants travel with the property. I've had properties where that's been an issue. Matt, I'll put you on the spot here, as I know there are some issues that pop up, maybe not dogs, but other things where it does violate covenants. That's not an ordinance. It goes with the property, and it's unfortunately incumbent upon the property owner to take an action with that. Matt, do you have any experience with that?
I don't have any direct, where is that coming from? I don't have any direct experience myself, but you're correct in stating that those covenants are a private contract amongst the property owners that need to be enforced amongst the property owners. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, if there's no pot of money to, or I don't know if there's an active board or not to take up any of those issues, sometimes they can go unenforced.
I wish. Not like our place in Florida where we pay an association fee, and if somebody isn't going by the covenants, you report it, and they force the issue or do it and charge you. There is no association fee, so it's left up, like you just said, to the resident. And it only affects us because it's behind their house and it's a vacant field back there, which, by the way, they're developing now, so they're going to have issues with the people build right behind them too. But right now it only affects us because it's right next to our property. And we don't want to call the police every day. It's intermittent, but it's aggravating. It's to the point where our kitchen windows face each other. Okay, if I'm at the sink or at the counter, they are, but it doesn't affect them. It's the dogs. The dogs will be out in that little, it might be 18 by 20, I don't know what it is, ballpark, and they look right at me in the kitchen and bark at me. If I make a noise in the kitchen or dining room, they hear when they're outside and they bark at us. And I know I brought that up at that meeting and was told it's supposed to be responsible ownership. Well, even when they take them back in, once they're barking, they've already been a nuisance. And like I say, we've called the police twice. And one of the reasons we haven't called them earlier is because we're gone half of the year. If they get cited and they contest it, we're going to be out of state by the time it gets to court. So it's just kind of like, we don't go out much, but it's pretty aggravating when somebody tells you that we're harassing them and we're harassing their dogs when they've been disturbing us for 2 years. So I don't know. We don't seem to have a solution. But when I saw these changes, I thought they might help. I don't think so. 5 dogs out there barking at one time is very loud. And I don't know, this probably doesn't pertain to this at all. I probably have to go to somebody else. I might not. I don't know that any of them are licensed, which would require them to be vaccinated because you're supposed to. I read the law pertaining to how much time and the licensing and how often and having to be vaccinated first. I don't know that any of them are, but we don't talk to them because I don't want to get in a hassle. We don't want to get in a shouting match or an argument or a problem with a neighbor right next door.
All right, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Council members?
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? Then I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Councilman Roby?
Thank you, Mayor. Beth, if you allow me to pick on you on this one, what are the maximums for dogs? What rules are applied here? What's all involved?
I'm going to need some backup on Matt with this, but as far as these 2 rules go, the reason we started on this project was because of the nebulous definition of kennel. You know, you might think a kennel is the, 6x8. Somebody else might think of a kennel as where they breed and board dogs and things like that. And so there was also 2 different definitions by zoning rule in Title III and Title 21. So that just all needed to be cleaned up, was what is a kennel. So we decided to go with commercial kennel is one where people breed dogs and do that for a living. And that is required to be in ag zoning or, some of those other ones. So in the city, with the ordinances that we changed for zoning, excuse me, and with that will be reflected in Title III, that's where the setbacks are now. So if you have a dog kennel and a dog house, that's what we're calling an enclosure instead of a kennel. And that's the ones that are required to meet the setbacks that we have for any other accessory structure, a shed or whatever. So what we did was we took out that confusion about the word kennel and changed the residential structure to be enclosure. So it would be the dog house and then the dog enclosure. So that's what we did with the last change we just made to the zoning ordinance. So I don't know if there's any more questions I can clarify on that. Did I get that all? Got that? Okay, got guys nodding their heads over there. So we've got that. Now, as we get to the next one in terms of the 5 dogs, the reason we came to 5, it was a negotiation and kind of a back and forth between planning and zoning and the Animal Control Board. Typically in the past, there had been a pushback against a limit on the number of dogs people can own, but we really felt that with the size of the city and growing and things like that, that it was time to put a number on that. And 5 was the number that kind of came up with all the meetings and things like that. And you're unfortunately in one of those rare instances where somebody has more than 5 dogs. We kind of went through that whole process, talked to Animal Control, Police Department, and it's a very rare situation. Talked to some vets and said how many people actually have 5 dogs or more. And it was such a rare event that we felt that 5 would be fine. And that would solve the rub between we shouldn't have any limits and we should have some limits. And so that's where they came up with that. Now, I had something I was going to go with that 5. Anyway, there's where we're at, it's just to do that. And so we looked at other cities and what their rules were. Like I said, we talked to Animal Control, Police Department, veterinarians, what was their experience with that. And so this was a very rare occurrence. So it was one of those things where we went back and forth with planning and zoning. There was a lot of discussion on it, and this was where everything fell out that everybody was comfortable with. So that's how that worked. And I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know if Matt can help or whatever. What is happening up with you guys is a matter of a combination of covenants and not being, and just a bad neighbor situation. And I wish I had answers for you as to how to resolve that bad neighbor situation. that's a rare thing that we don't get calls on a regular basis for other situations like yours. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm back out of my depth now when I say that I don't know what else we can. I believe that these new setback rules will actually help people, because you'll no longer be able to stick your kennel right up on the lot line and be able to say, yep, I'm slapping my kennel up on the lot line. And then you do have somebody who has their dogs running right next to. I don't know what your layout of your property is, but so this, by doing the setbacks, will actually keep people from putting their dog enclosures right on the lot line. So this is actually helping bring them back into the property proper. So, because in the past you could put the kennel right up on the lot line. So that solves this problem. Does that help?
I'll chime in a little bit too. So it sounds like maybe one of the primary issues is the odor that just, even though it's not on your property, it's just coming from, was that, I understood you correctly? So there, I mean, there's a statute, or excuse me, an ordinance, that the police department could, investigate, and potentially cite them for allowing that to occur and for it to offend you as a neighbor. Currently, as the zoning ordinance reads, it could be interpreted to mean that if you have more than 2 dogs, you need to have a conditional use in the egg zone. Now, there's been debate about whether or not that was the original intent of the zoning ordinance, because there's the definition of kennel is identical to the Title III definition with the exception of the word own. So the word own is in the definition in Title 21. Meaning, again, it could be interpreted to mean if you want to have more than 2 dogs, you need to get a conditional use in the egg zone. And the Animal Control Board, if that definition is, if that interpretation is correct, disagreed with that and proposed this framework we're considering currently. So I guess that's all I have to add as far as that goes.
Oh, there was a lot of back and forth. They worked on this for months and months. The Animal Control Board, then the Plan Commission, citizens, mostly the Animal Control Board. We did a lot of kind of sub meetings with specific people from each group. So yeah, as you could imagine, anything that has to do with dogs and kids, that's where it really gets rough. So anyway, Councilman Albertson.
I sympathize with what you're talking about with your neighbor situation. I also noticed that Chief Toomey did stop over and visit with you, and my feeling with Chief Toomey is that he will do everything he can to help you. I'm just trying to think of how this policy is going to help your situation. And quite frankly, I don't think a yes or a no vote is going to help that, but Chief Toomey might be able to help you. And I know you don't want the Hatfields and McCoys, but the truth is, I think that Chief Toomey is your answer to it and not this particular policy or either one of these two. And you don't want to go there, but I mean, if you're getting accused of disturbing somebody's dogs by sitting on your patio, I would say keep calling Chief Toomey until he gets tired of you calling him. Because when he does, he's going to say, I've tried to work this out, and now we're going to get serious about it. So I would use him as your resource there.
Right. I think that's true. It's not probably appropriate to write a rule that can address every situation. That's probably not possible. Well, you need to talk in the microphone so it's on the record.
I get the very distinct feeling that they've determined that now that it's doghouse, their garage has been cleaned up, and it's a doghouse. And we have already been informed by animal control that that enclosure that they have behind that alcove is not a kennel, so it can be left there. So I don't think whether it gets voted yes or no that it can help us either.
The enclosure part is changing, so that will be regulated. So that should help.
Okay, yeah. No. Here's so close. You got it.
Not sure it will solve, but it might help. Councilman Roby?
One final comment. Is it Anita?
Anita.
Anita, okay, just one final comment. I have a little familiar with the covenant issue, having lived in a homeowners association in the past. Regrettably, in that sense, if it's a covenant violation, your only real option, I think, is small claims court or to take legal action, and that's regrettable. But when the homeowners association is not staffed with the president and officers, what have you, and they're paying dues, it really falls on you, regrettably. That's kind of the only option you've got from a covenant standpoint.
I know Greg Hofteser has been very good to visit with me, but it didn't take more than a couple of back and forths for a couple of months to figure out that there was going to be nothing done unless we did it and engaged other neighbors which aren't affected. But I believe they've changed their covenants now to 3. I'm not sure, but he said they were going to change it to make sure that that didn't occur again. I don't know, it's right on our border, and our border is real close, and so it affects us every day. And I do know that they're getting them back in after they bark, but they have the doggy door. So you got this big garage that's their doghouse, and they go out the doggy door into that small enclosure. And of course, every time they're out there, if they see us or hear us, outside or in, they're barking. And they're not just barking at us. They're looking up at their deck, and they're looking in their kitchen window because they want to get back in the house, not back in the garage. So, but since we have called the police the last couple of times, they've been more careful that once they're barking, within a couple of minutes, they get them back in. But that intermittent barking and that still being there, and that their irrigation system goes off twice, sometimes 3 times a day, every day, rain or shine. I know why they did it when the dogs were going out in the yard before the fence. It was to dilute it, so they didn't burn out the grass. But the grass would be like this because of the dog poop. But then they enclosed that, and now they're told everything is okay. So it's kind of like our hands are tied.
All right.
You go out there, have coffee in the morning, and you got your dogs barking at you, and they finally take them in, but it's still a pain in the butt.
Sure.
Sorry. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. In case I haven't done this, I'm going to close the public hearing. And council, any further discussion? Anyone? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate your input.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Okay, item J is second reading of ordinance number 21-19, an ordinance amending sections 3.0101, 3.0105, and 3.0109 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown pertaining to dog houses and the number of allowable dogs. Do you have a motion? Have a motion by Y? Second by Manti. Okay, and Matt, you want to explain this?
Thank you,
A little bit
Mayor.
different?
Yep, so in conjunction with the ordinance that was just approved, this ordinance affects Title III, the animal control ordinance. And it, I guess, three main results here. It removes the definition of kennel from animal control, and because it's now placed under Title 21 as a commercial kennel. It removes the quote-unquote 50-foot rule from the Animal Control Board because now there's going to be the setback regulation in Title 21. And then finally, it makes explicit in the Animal Control Ordinance that no more than 5 dogs are allowed over the age of 4 months on any lot or premises in the city.
And there are no exceptions.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. No exceptions. Okay. Councilman Roby.
No exceptions. Nobody gets grandfathered in.
We can appeal it. Go ahead.
Well, so that's the kind of the rub on this stuff is, especially with the kennels. I suspect we've just created a bunch of non-conforming kennels. We've also, if this is approved, point in case here with individuals that have 8 dogs. I suspect we'll enforce these until they assert a grandfathering. We will enforce them as if we can. So if we say, hey, you have a kennel that violates the rule, if they push back and say, well, it was here before, and they show us that that's true, then they're probably exempt from that regulation. Same with the number of dogs. If we say, hey, you have 8 dogs, well, we had 8 dogs before you passed the rule, it made it 5. And if they showed us that was true, that would probably be enough for us to have to back off. But otherwise, I think we will enforce the rules until they assert that defense.
I don't want to put words in or I think extra rules or whatever. Don't we have the option though, you falling back on these rules we have with the setbacks and the number of dogs and things like that on a complaint basis?
So it's not explicit that it's a complaint basis, but as with much of our 560-page ordinance, it is a largely complaint-based process, just because we don't have the manpower to police all this stuff on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Any other comments? All right. All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item K is second reading of ordinance number 21-20, an ordinance amending sections 3.0101 and 3.0104 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown, making modifications to the dangerous and vicious dog process. I have a motion by Holene, a second by Rademski, and we'll ask the City Attorney, Matt Roby, to tell us about this one, please.
Thank you, Mayor. In 2019, the council approved a revision to the dangerous and vicious dog process in ordinance, and through the last 2 years of operation, there's been just a few identified clarifications that were needed as a result of kind of road testing the ordinance. And so it just makes some minor clarifications. One, it clarifies that trespassing refers to criminal trespassing, not simply a 9-year-old stumbling upon a neighbor's yard. It has to have a criminal intent. It will give the discretion to the animal control officer to immediately seize a dog that might be vicious and an immediate danger to the public. It gives those seeking to appeal a declaration 10 days rather than 5 to appeal. It just makes the time frames consistent throughout the ordinance. And finally, it gives the board some discretion to come up with creative solutions where if a dog's declared dangerous or vicious and the board wants to come up with a solution that maybe isn't spelled out in ordinance, like putting up a fence or obedience training, microchipping, etc., it gives the board some ability to do that.
All right, thank you. Any questions, Council? Councilman Vilhauer?
I know an awful lot of work went into this ordinance change a couple of years ago. Other than these minor tweakings, has that been an improvement? Or, I mean, Beth, you're nodding your head, yes. So this was an improvement to what we had before, which we didn't really have much before.
I believe it has, and as we go forward, it also offers clarification to law enforcement and to the animal control officer as to what, and that's where some of these changes have come about. You know, like Matt said, we've road tested it, we've used it, we've taken input from officers, animal control, and we try to make it so that it's user-friendly too for law enforcement as well as the public. So we continue to do that, and yes, I believe we've had more opportunity to see problems before they get to be really bad problems, and also gives us some more leeway. You know, we've had problems in the past where we couldn't make much happen about a vicious dog without going to court, and that leaves a very vicious and dangerous situation. Vicious and dangerous, but it leaves a dangerous situation to the public when we haven't been able to take that action. So this helps do that too.
I would just add to that too. The one piece we're still working through a little bit is, you know, the previous version that, like, as you said, didn't contain a whole lot of. There wasn't a whole lot to it really. The definition, the word choice was vicious. So it was a vicious dog, and so now we have these two kind of levels where vicious If a dog is declared vicious, we're saying that dog needs to be euthanized unless you show us otherwise. Whereas dangerous, it's less serious. It just needs to have maybe some guardrails put in place. But that's been maybe the one thing we're still working through with some of the officers, just to make sure they look for that definition between vicious and dangerous and classify it accordingly.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, we removed item L and we're moving to item M, first reading of ordinance number 21-22, a temporary emergency ordinance of the City of Watertown regarding the issuance of local medical cannabis establishment permits and/or licenses. And I will ask the Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, to kick this one off for us. No action tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is first reading. Since, as we all know, we have the upcoming medical cannabis allowance within the state of South Dakota. The purpose of this emergency ordinance amendment is to allow time for the city to create and adopt the pertinent zoning requirements for medical cannabis use, while also coinciding with the state of South Dakota's Department of Health regulations. Now, South Dakota codified law allows for the legal use of medical marijuana effective on July 1st, 2021. However, the state has until October 29th of this year to establish rules for medical cannabis. So the city, and City of Watertown, as well as many other local governments, need an appropriate amount of time to draft zoning ordinance regulations and have them effective by the end of October. So what we're trying to do here, and what this emergency ordinance will do, is allow the city to deny applications or permits for medical cannabis establishments prior to the State Department of Health promulgating their regulations. And then we can draft our zoning ordinance around those regulations that the state ends up putting together and adopting. And because a lot of this relates to zoning implications and where this will be allowed or not allowed throughout the city, that of course falls under the community development function of Public Works. And with that, Stacy Bungard, Community Development Manager, is online with us tonight, and she's helped draft this in collaboration with First District and the South Dakota Municipal League, and of course Matt's helped off and on with those same groups as well. So we'll all stand by for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
If we don't adopt, which to me looks like we have no choice but to, if we don't adopt it, is it just wide open then come July 1st relative to medical marijuana?
Can you answer that, Matt, from a local standpoint or state
If we don't do
standpoint?
anything, what happens?
I think the concern from the city would be if we don't do anything and somebody applies for a license. So there's a couple different things going on. It's true that not until October 29th, nobody can start operating until the state puts out their rules, regardless of what we do locally. But the concern that kind of prompted this desire to have a temporary ordinance is that if somebody applies for a dispensary license, for example, and we don't have anything in place, well, if the state comes out with their rules, they meet that rule, the state calls us and says, have they met your rules? And we say we don't have any. They say, okay, then here's your license, go operate wherever you want to operate. So the intent here is to hit a little bit of a pause button, and just to, let's back up a little bit. You know, somebody might be looking at this going, well, why are we doing this temporary emergency ordinance? This was passed in November. Shouldn't we have had something ready to go? Well, part of what happened here was we were getting these cues from the legislature all along, right up until almost the last 2 days of the legislature, that there was going to be some sort of a fix that was going to, I shouldn't say a fix, but some sort of action that was going to put this off into the future a little bit. And then even after the session was over, there was still talk of a special session that said, well, do we need to do anything yet? Is the legislature going to act? We don't know. So then we got to about 6 weeks ago, and it was pretty clear that we needed to put something in place. So this is the immediate action that we would take to stall, or not stall, but to give us time to put in more permanent requirements for licensing and zoning in time to meet that October 29th deadline that the state has.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. We'll move on to the next one, which we've already done. And O is the first reading of ordinance number 21-24, a temporary emergency ordinance of the City of Watertown and Cottington County regarding the issuance of local medical cannabis establishment permits and/or licenses. Sounds very much like the one we just did. So I'll ask the Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, to introduce this one, maybe tell us the difference.
Thank you, Mayor. Really, and that's what I'll emphasize here, the only difference is this pertains to the joint jurisdictional area, the 3-mile perimeter around the city limits, and is otherwise the exact same language as the ordinance that we just discussed.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councilman Vilhauer?
I assume the county, it will be doing or needs to do the same thing then?
Correct, and we'll also be having some joint jurisdictional board and county city combined meetings here in the near future pertaining to the same regulations.
Not related to this particular topic, but who's our representative or liaison on that joint board from the council?
Well, the joint planning is a subset of the planning commission.
Correct.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who those folks
I
are.
would have to defer to Brandy or Stacy.
Okay, so we don't have anybody from the council directly on that joint jurisdictional board?
No, but so Thursday there'll be that joint board will be meeting. I guess Brandy could probably chime in on that. And then actually the city council, what's odd about that joint jurisdictional zone is it actually has to be a joint meeting of both the county commission and the city council. So the 21st, there's going to be a pre-meeting to the city council where the county commissioners will be here. You'll all consider the ordinance at the same time and you'll both vote on it separately to put it into effect. But as far as the joint planning, Brandy can maybe touch on that.
Sounds exciting.
Brandy, do you want to touch on that?
She may have logged out, but really what'll happen there is the county will host a joint powers planning commission meeting, and that's where our joint board will take action and make recommendation for approval to both the county and the city governing boards.
Right. I remember doing that one other time. We had a joint meeting at the Extension Center. But are we thinking that'll just be right here in this council chambers?
The planning meeting is not going to be here because of the voting that's going on.
Oh,
that'll be
sure.
held off-site.
Yep.
I forget the exact location, but it's the extension building.
It is at the Extension building. Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item P. First reading of ordinance number 21-25, an ordinance amending section 10.0105 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown, replacing references to mayor with city manager relating to the duties and powers of the fire chief. This is the first reading, so no action. And I'll ask the city attorney, Matt Roby, to tell us about this change.
Thank you, Mayor. So this kind of tags along with the mayor to manager changes, I guess, matter of course changes almost that we made with the second reading at the last meeting. The reason this one was kept out separately, I had this thought in my head that maybe it would be treated a little differently because of it's giving the fire chief basically one of the abilities it gives the fire chief is to tear down buildings that aren't otherwise on fire and to maybe stop the spread of a fire. But so I didn't know if that should be a political decision or not, but based on the feedback I got from the council at the last meeting, it seems pretty clear that it should just follow the chain of command. So the proposal here is just to replace mayor and council here with city manager as the fire chief's superior.
All right, any questions or comments about that? Okay. Item Q is the first reading of ordinance number 21-26, an ordinance amending chapter 7.18 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown regarding the composition, election, and terms of council members. Again, no action, and I'll ask Matt Roby, city attorney, to explain it.
Thank you, Mayor. This, again, has to do with our change in form of government. It was kept out of the original bunch just because it required a little bit more of an extensive rewrite. It does two things. One, it just updates the council composition language in the ordinance to essentially just match what the home rule charter already says. And two, it replaces the election process for council president and vice president with the election process for deputy mayor, requiring the deputy mayor to receive 4 yes votes to be elected deputy mayor.
All right, Councilman Vilhauer?
I'll just make a comment, Matt. A huge thank you to you. I know you've said in the past you enjoy doing things like this, but really, thank you so much for picking up all the loose odds and ends out there and putting them in the right place.
Glad to help.
Yeah, yeah. It takes a word man like that with a big brain, so luckily we have that on our staff. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to item R, approval of resolution number 21-24, contingency transfer, general and capital improvement funds.
So moved.
I have a motion by Albertson and a second by Vilhauer, and I'll ask the finance officer, Kristen Bobzien, to tell us about this, please. If she's still on. Yes, she is. Can't hear you, Kristen. Kristen, we can't hear you. We see your lips moving.
We can't hear you either.
Help. Maybe she'll just come in the room. She can go to the, come to the podium. She doesn't have her computer. We cannot hear you. She's doing sign language. I think what she said was, "I'll be right out."
So the resolution 2124 is actually for the contingency transfer. As I was saying to myself earlier, so we'll start with the general fund. So the general fund in the police department, and if there's any further questions, Tim can step up and help too. But the police department had an opportunity to essentially kind of package deal the tasers, the body cams, and then the video storage. With this, it increases their annual maintenance, but what we'll see is in the next couple years, it'll be a reduction of the capital purchases, so there won't be the need for the purchase of the tasers and the body cams. So the library, Dee Dee was here, I think it was the last meeting, and she asked for an increase to finish out the carpeting throughout the library, so this will cover that budget. And then under the capital improvement fund, this was a long time ago that we talked about this, but the HVAC unit on the Prairie Lakes Wellness Center does need to be replaced, and that kind of Terry came forward and asked for authority to do that and to get the process started, and it's here. I think he said it's coming in tomorrow. So this will give that budget authority. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Otherwise, that's it.
All right, thank you. Questions, council? Comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Item S is approval of a professional services agreement for the Level 3 Cultural Resource Inventory and Architectural Recording for the Watertown Regional Airport, project number 1927, with Metcalf Archaeological Consultants, Inc., in the amount of $38,668. Authorize the mayor to sign all applicable documents.
So moved.
Motion by Hoyer and a second by Y. And I will ask the Public Works Director, Heath Von Eyck, to tell us about it.
Thank you, Mayor. This professional services agreement will help the airport accomplish a few things. It'll get the full airport property certified and cleared for additional development. And we've ran into a couple issues recently where we haven't had adequate space that have had this study and this level of clearance performed yet, and that's prevented us from utilizing the property in the way we'd want to. One of those instances was the snow removal equipment building, where we had several different locations identified as potential possibilities. we ended up landing with one that will work very effectively and is not an issue, but not having this study done did limit our options. Another discussion recently, as you recall, is ag operator, aerial spraying operation that would like to start their business being performed from the airport property. And again, we're out of space to offer that business operator because we don't have these clearances performed yet at this point. This is one step in the right direction to meet those FAA requirements in providing these archaeological clearances. And again, this would impact and provide these clearances for the entire airport property and provide any level of detailed information through this study on any mitigation that may have to occur. With all that being said, Airport Manager Todd Syries online, along with, I believe, a representative from Helms is with us too tonight. If you have any questions, we'll stand by for them.
All right, thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
Just out of curiosity, Heath, they're doing the research or the archaeological digging at our airport, correct?
Correct.
So just in the write-up here that they have 4 rooms in Mitchell. Are they staying in Mitchell or are they staying in Watertown?
What?
That might be a typo on their part.
That's a typo.
Okay, it's under field mobilization on page 91 of the packet.
Yeah, I'm guessing that would make sense that that's a typo.
We have.
They really
nice
like Mitchell.
hotels. Good catch. Yeah. And any other question? Is Councilman Rademski?
I guess if this is approved tonight, then would this survey or archaeological dig be done this year yet, or what are we looking at?
Yes, we do anticipate that beginning here yet this summer. I believe they had a tentative July availability to get started as soon as July here. Now that may have shifted back a little bit based on our timing of getting it approved, but it would be approved or performed yet this year.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Heath, is this holding up the current airport terminal project itself, or just some of these ancillary areas?
No impacts to the current terminal project. Again, aside from the location of our snow removal equipment building, that is not being held up because we found a location that does work and does not need this additional clearance. So it is these ancillary items that will help in the future.
And this is just for the survey itself, so if there's some mitigation efforts that need to be put forth at a later time, that'll be extra over and above this, correct?
Yes, it would. And I'd refer to Todd to maybe expand on that component a little bit, or Brooke from Helms, just to get a feel for, there may be mitigation efforts, but there also just may be clear prohibition of areas that we cannot touch or get into as well, is my understanding. But could Brooke or Todd, could you please expand on that?
We cannot hear Todd. Todd, can you hear us? Nod. We can't hear you. I think he can hear us.
I'm moving my cursor.
Yeah, okay, see the microphone? Click it. Does that work? Or on Todd?
It doesn't show that I am.
Todd will come back and get you. They can hear us? Yeah, but you can't, you can. How strange.
Bear with us, Brooke and Todd. We'll get to you.
Brooke, can you hear us? I don't think so. Oh, yes? Yes, okay. Yeah, we can't read lips. Right. Say something.
Hello?
Yep, now we can hear you. Brooke,
Okay, we
say
can hear you the
something.
whole time.
Brooke is muted.
Hello?
There, okay, it's good now.
Good.
Thank you, IT professionals. Okay, Todd. why don't
Okay,
you
so,
go?
thank you, Mayor. And Heath, we would not have to mitigate anything they found during this archaeological study until we wanted to develop that area.
Okay, that's good to know. Is there any cost share from state or feds on this, or this all our dime?
This would be 100% refunded back to us through the CARES Act funding.
Oh.
Excuse me.
Okay, excellent.
So we wouldn't have to wait and put this on another project. If we didn't have the CARES Act money, we would have to wait and add it to an AIP project, but this one we can get reimbursed this summer for it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, council? All right, hurry back, because we need to vote. They were listening. They were just away from their microphones. Oh, yes. Brooke, while you're there, that reference to staying in hotels in Mitchell was a
Yes.
typo, right?
Correct. I just worked with this company here 6 months ago on a, or last summer, at the end of the summer, they did a survey in Mitchell. So I'm sure they just didn't change that.
Right. Well, when I sign it, I will, assuming it's approved, I'll just strike that out.
Perfect.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item T is authorize the mayor to sign a joint powers agreement with the state of South Dakota and Watertown Fire Rescue. I have a motion by Councilman Roby and a second by Rademski. Or other way around. Okay, motion by Rademski, second by Roby. And we have our fire chief, Don Rowland, here to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. The joint powers agreement is between the state of South Dakota and Watertown Fire Rescue. It's a continuation joint powers agreement that we've had in place for quite some time. And basically what it does is it provides technical rescue assistance to any county within the whole state of South Dakota. And basically it's our state South Dakota All Hazards team. What do? We've talked about it many times in many presentations. We do technical rescue, we do confined space, trench rescue, and hazardous materials. So basically what this does, it's a 15-section plan that kind of identifies how we get activated, how we're alerted, how we demobilize, and how we get our money back as well. So, and our finance officer likes that. So with that, I just ask for approval to sign it with the mayor, the finance director, the Department of Public Safety, as well as the Homeland Security Director.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, council? Or comments? All right, and this, is it different from the previous one at all?
Very small language cleanup on it. So
Okay,
yeah, all 4 teams are getting it signed within this week.
okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item U is presentation on downtown parking discussion and parking committee recommendations. So we have Police Chief Tim Toomey and Street Superintendent Rob Bainan here to give the presentation.
Let's pull it up. All right, Mayor, City Council, thanks for giving us an opportunity to talk about this. This is a pretty exciting topic, and I'm looking forward to getting your input on the presentation. I want to thank the committee members of the Downtown Parking Committee. It's Mayor Karen, Councilman Mike Hoyer, Councilwoman Beth Manty, City Attorney Matt Roby, and Rob and myself. We put some work into this. So in how this began was in early 2020, the police department was directed to the old Elks lot where there was some abandoned vehicles. There was a bus, there was a camper, there was several abandoned vehicles left in the parking lot. And it came to our attention, we didn't have a time frame on ordinance for that you could park in a city lot. So that's why we formed the committee, and that has expanded into the downtown parking lot. It's not a new problem. I'm sure all you guys are well aware. This came out in the H2O 2020 study as well. But parking has been an issue in the downtown, or challenge in the downtown area for many, many years. These are all just news articles from the early 60s of council taking action on the downtown parking. So today, I'm just going to go over a little bit of the historical if you wanted a history review, but we did have parking meters back in the 60s until the late 70s. And then we removed those after JCPenney's moved out, moved over to the Watertown Mall. We had the 2 to 5 parking. We had some chiefs, police made it a sign complaint. Some had people hired to go around checking for violations. The street department was having problems clearing the streets. So the parking has been an issue from chief to chief to chief and council to council to council. So today, the business is booming in the downtown area. I know Councilman Hoyer and myself on separate occasions walked around and talked to each of the business owners in the downtown area, and they're enthusiastic about having this problem. They're not mad that we have a parking problem. They're looking forward to solutions, and they were happy to have a voice. But there are challenges with the uptown, or the downtown, downtown booming. So what are the business owners saying? These are taken off of social media as well as in person, but they had a lot of great comments and a lot of great ideas. This one particular person thought sprucing up the public lots would be a big plus, better signage, striping, maybe make the cleaned occasionally, and adding a little landscaping. Signs was a big theme. Everybody talked about the signs, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But signs were a big issue. People love that there's a downtown parking problem. They also talked about the tenants and the business owners having designated spots in the public parking lots and getting them off of the downtown streets. Stripe the parking lot in Arrows purple. That was suggested to us by Scott McEnroy from the gym, and I thought that was amazing, and so did the committee, and we'll talk about that again here in a minute. Better lighting, and the presentation is going to show you we do have some improvements to do on the lighting in these parking lots to make them safer. And this is always an issue with the beer bottles and the broken glass in the parking lots, and doing a better job cleaning those up. And then this was also brought up that although we have cameras in some of these parking lots, they're kind of hidden. They're at the top of a pole. Nobody knows they're cameras. If people know there's a camera by putting a sign up and saying you're being watched, it makes it safer for everybody. So here's some pictures of the downtown. This should be changed to downtown parking lots. But this is an example of what the signs look like. If you could see this little sign over here, if you're driving around looking for a parking spot, you're not going to look up and see that little sign. And that's what is indicative of all our parking lots. We identified 9 different public parking lots in the downtown area, which was more than I expected. And I know there's some development going on. We're going to maybe lose a couple, but we're having other plans for that. This is the 10 block of 3rd Street by the Senior Citizen Center. That's one of the parking lots that are probably going to be consumed by that park and have some different opportunities there. This is a little parking lot. If you added up all these spots, there's hundreds of parking spots in these public parking lots that aren't being used to their full potential. And you can see these little parking signs that really don't draw your attention if you're driving around. Here's one at the 10 block of South Broadway. 10 block of First Avenue Northeast. That's by Doc's Bar. So as you can see, there's parking lots all over the place, and here's kind of an overview of where the public parking lots currently are. So another assignment for me was to assign one of my patrol officers to go around at night and look at these parking lots and look for the lighting. So one of our officers did that and just gave me his summary of it. This is the parking lot by Transit. There's a one by South County, by County Fair. as you can see, these are kind of dark. They could use, this one's pretty well lit. We do have some street lights that are out, so I don't know. We'll get those fixed.
Josh, call him.
What's that?
Josh is the expert on getting the
Is that-
lights fixed.
All right, we'll be talking. We'll get you a ladder. So just some examples of what the parking lots, this one's well lit, but there are some around that are rather dark. This person pointed out, or not this one, but this one could use some more lighting. And feel free to stop me if you want to look at any of these pictures closer. I think this is because of the development going on, but 2 of the parking lot lights are out in that lot. That's the old Elks lot where the new senior center is going. This is one that's very well lit. I wish they all looked like this. This is the one right by Vast. So after looking at all that and discussing it as a committee, we have some recommendations. We broke it up into a couple different phases. The first one was obviously to make those signs better. So it was Rob that brought up the idea that maybe we customize a sign that's unique to Watertown, that kind of highlights the great town that it is, but also make it something that stands out, that if you're driving down looking for a spot by the Goss Opera House, you'll see a public parking lot and maybe choose that. Go.
Go ahead, Councilman Roby.
Not a bad idea. Let me look at it a different way. Every time I'm in a big city where I'm going, I look for the blue sign with the white P on it. That's almost, I wouldn't say international, but it's a national parking sign, and I look for that every time I'm traveling somewhere. Kind of a universal sign. I would consider something like that because you don't have to educate people on it. And you may be getting to this. The other thing is I think that there ought to be a real inexpensive flyer put together with a very clear colored map that each business can hand out and start training the public.
Great idea.
I think that the idea is sooner, I mean, I've always been told we have a lot of parking, it's just it's hidden or nobody knows about it. So just 2 suggestions.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right, the big blue P is kind of universal, but I think we could adopt a purple P.
I was just going to say, Don, the memory hook we had was Purple Public. So trying to still have that school pride going.
Actually, that's not, it's not an MUTCD standard. Yeah, the parking ramps maybe, but.
And then some are green too in some other communities, but.
We're going to show you a couple examples that Rob found that might strike your interest. But they also talked about striping all the parking lots in the Aero purple paint. We just discussed that, and I don't know if we could get that light of a purple to show up on the asphalt, and Rob can touch base on that. But I thought that was also a clever idea, that if you had the public parking lot striped in purple, it would be blatantly obvious that that's your public lot.
Hey, real quick to something Don just said. I noticed, and I don't know who would know the answer to this, there's a handout down at County Fair, a little brochure about downtown businesses. Who made that?
Havila.
Who?
Her name's Havila.
Somebody just took it upon themselves to make it?
Well, it's a little more than that. Didn't people contribute to the cost, the business owners?
Yeah, I mean, she came around and then basically you could pay a fee to get your business listed in it, and then
Okay, I
she
didn't know.
took the time to do it.
It was a business activity.
Okay, well,
But we could definitely use one that has the lots. That'd be really helpful.
yeah.
And then the third part of our recommendation is to make all city public lots 72-hour maximum parking. That way we keep the broken window theory down, where you don't have abandoned vehicles and such in the parking lot. Here's a drawing that Rob came up with. And
I should have gotten this out before. Good job on this, Tim, by the way. So what I did here, actually I did a lot of research online to see what other communities were doing, and that is true, Don. A lot of communities do use a blue sign with a white P for parking. We were looking at something kind of unique to Watertown with possibly doing public parking lots in purple. And that would just be basically a way that people locally could tell people come to town, just look for the purple lot. And the stripes, we were looking at doing having colors mixed just to do a specific purple for the lots, which would have to be a lighter purple, I think, for them to show up on newer or old asphalt or concrete parking lots as well. What we have here on the left sign was just basically we're public parking, but talking about naming the lots in town, because there's a lot of times people refer to like Sparky's lot or, you know, the auditorium lot or something like that, but we don't have any official name that I know of for any of these lots. So that would help local people and possibly people, if we do flyers like that, if you name the lots, you see on the sign, oh, okay, that's Midway lot right there. That's the one I'm looking for. And then the center one was just basically a public parking sign. And then on the right one, I saw a lot of signs and online that said free public parking, so people weren't, it was just, they didn't have to worry about paying or anything like that. It was on the sign. Then below, basically, we would have the 72-hour parking, and then the ordinance number, which that is not the ordinance number. That's just a dummy number. And then as far as sizes, we were looking at probably the minimum size you would want a sign like that is 2 foot by 3 foot. We think if you're driving down, let's say you're driving down First Avenue North here and you're looking for public parking halfway down the block, we think you could see those signs at 150 feet away pretty good. And if we put them vertical like that, 3 foot tall, 2 foot wide, it requires 1 post. If we turn them the other way, it requires 2 posts to keep them from vibrating and breaking because of wind. So, what else? Oh, paint. Yeah, the purple paint. It's possible we can get it. We're still working on pricing. And let's see what else. I think we're looking at signs that could be anywhere installed like that, probably around $150 to $160 a sign. If we did the signs like what Tim was showing earlier, where the signs were basically you had to be in front of the parking lot to see that it said public parking. But if you put the signs 90 degrees from the way most of them are and put them back to back, you'd see them from down a block, down, you know, at an intersection when you're trying to find it down the block. Because a lot of people drive by slow and see if they can see a sign or something down the way, and we would put them back to back out into the sidewalk area, or by possibly, you know, it can't be directly in the center of the sidewalk area, but maybe near the light poles in line with those or somewhat in line, so you could see them from down the block.
Yeah, so for a low cost, I mean, we can encourage people to start using these public lots and clear some spots for the businesses that need them. That was phase one. So phase one was, again, to stripe the parking lots, put up the signs, and the 72-hour limit. Phase two is to repair, improve, and add lighting to the parking lots that need it. Update the cameras, including adding signs. And I know Spencer has been looking at these uptown cameras or downtown cameras, and is working on a plan there. And then any other ideas that you have. So, questions, comments?
Any questions? I like the purple too. I really like those sign design too. We might need to tweak it though, but I think it looks good.
And Mayor,
All right.
if I could add a comment to the sign design that Rob put together.
Sure.
That's something along the lines he and I have talked about with wayfinder signs throughout town. We haven't implemented them yet, but a unique design as a wayfinder would tie directly into parking lots being a form of a wayfinding sign to identify the parking lots. But the wayfinders generally, otherwise, we would envision looking something like that and then pointing and directing traffic from out of town or in town residents to many of the public facilities like the library or the wellness center, city hall, WMU, and other a multitude of locations throughout town to help direct people from the main arterials to those locations throughout town. And I just wanted to put that plug in for that design because I think that would tie well into that wayfinder sign program.
All right, thank you. Councilman Y?
Would it be possible on some of these public parking lots to do, depending on their size, 1 or 2 handicap in those parking lots too, for the individuals that would like to use that? Is that a possibility?
I think we have, don't we, have a standard?
Yeah, I think
Do you know
some.
what it is?
I don't off the top of my head, but trying to think. I think we do have some of those in our parking lots. I'd have
think
to
we do
check with
too.
Tracy on what we have there because he's the one that's striping them and
Yeah,
he
there's
puts them
a
back.
minimum number that, once you hit that trigger, then you put in a handicap. But if we're below the threshold, we could consider it as well. Councilman Hoyer?
So, and some of it too, having walked, like Chief Toomey did, some of what came up is that like our handicap parking that's on the streets right now, like on Kemp, it's not quite uniform. It could use a little bit of paint update, but then some of the signs are missing right now, so we're trying to remedy some of that so that folks can find them. But yeah, trying to get a little more accessibility for folks.
Yeah. Councilman Albertson?
Either Chief or Michael, either one, you mentioned about business people parking downtown. Is that an issue? I mean, do the business people take up parking spots that would normally go for other people? I'm just not, I know we've talked about it, but you mentioned it. So I'm
It's
just wondering,
definitely
what kind of an issue is that?
It's a perceived issue for sure. I can't verify it. I haven't verified it, but the business owners believe it's an issue. Many had said that if they didn't park, the employees didn't park in front of their business, they'd have much more room.
It's the employees of the business just down a
Right.
little bit, parking in front of your business.
Right.
So it's not your own employees parking, blocking your customer's spot. Councilman Hoyer?
I'll toss out too, some of the concerns that came up with it and why some of the folks were parking on the street like that was the perceived not being safe in the public lots. A lot of them were talking about the lighting not being quite right. There was a big number of them who just didn't know there were public lots or where to go to get to them. So that was some of the issue that was going on. Our main streets like Kemp, Broadway, Maple, they're well lit, but once you tuck through alleys and stuff, it gets a little dark and there's some perceived risk there. So we're trying to find the remedies to kind of make that a little more comfortable for people and give them a solution to it.
Councilman Lallam?
Thanks for your guys' work on this. What kind of time frame are you looking at doing these signage?
Right now, we're working on finding out if we can get these signs done through our sign vendor that we get most of our regulatory signs through. But we're still waiting to hear back from, there's two of them we deal with, and we're still waiting to hear back from one of them. And then this type of sign, you know, when you look like locally, I think our two sign vendors in town that I'm aware of work on vendor type signage. But this type of signage, they could probably do it, I'm certain, so.
Would they have to, you could probably wrap those.
Yeah, and that's the thing I would need to discuss with them. Our signs currently that we do get from Lyle Signs for our regulatory signs and our other signs in town, it is a vinyl they put on there, but it's you know, it's guaranteed for I think 7 years.
You'd have to go with reflective, wouldn't you not, Rob?
Yeah, on this type of sign we would want to. So if people, I would think, are driving down the block, half a block away, could still see them under the street lights and stuff.
Councilman Hoyer?
A little off topic from that, but the other thing we're pursuing is integration with Google Maps so that you can just Google where these are and you can find it on your phone just to help it out. It'll be nice too if we get a naming convention going to plug that in, but a lot of times you can designate these locations pretty easily.
Yeah. And
I'm sorry.
I have to admit, I have been confused myself, and I've drawn the maps for where the public lots are, but when you're in a hurry, you're like, oh, is that one of the public ones? I think this is going to be really helpful.
Yeah, Rob wants first choice at the Rob lot, so.
Yeah. The names,
Yeah, if we're gonna
you're
name
have
them.
to duke it out for the names.
We could have a naming contest.
Yes, we
But
should.
the other advantage, and maybe it was obvious, but when you have a name on your lot, so if you're having an event or you're having a party or you're going to do something, you can put right in the brochure or your invitation or whatever, park in the Midway lot on the
Right.
corner, whatever, so that the naming the lots is really, I think, an important part of this. And, you know, if we can't duke it out for the lots, maybe we can have even a naming contest. Some are obvious because they just lend themselves to being, you know, a certain lot. But it does make a difference when they're named because it just makes it easier for logistics.
It's going to help law enforcement as well when we have to respond to those lots to know specifically.
Right, and you're going to want the names to be logical so that you don't have to be familiar with the town to know that, you know. Anyway, I won't. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Mayor.
Appreciate that.
I see
Yes.
Spencer has his hand up.
Spencer, where are you? Go ahead, Spencer.
I'm on Teams.
Yeah, I
hey,
see ya.
Say, I just wanted, the only concern I have is, you know, as I'm working on kind of our style guides and branding, while purple is, you know, school pride and it makes sense to a lot of Watertown, is I don't necessarily know if it goes with the Watertown blue, that type of thing. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out as if a rebranding is in our future, how that plays into this thought and color scheme. That's all I had.
Yeah, thank you. It's an excellent point. Councilman Hoyer?
Well, and with the rebranding, we may want to tie in a little bit with Watertown Development Company, because I know that
They're doing it.
they're doing some rebranding right now.
And so is the CVB, I think.
Yeah, so it's all in conjunction, so
Right.
probably should touch base with them.
Councilman Lallam?
At one time, to Spencer's point, they talked about doing like historical colored signage. You know, for downtown, if you wanted to make it a historical downtown area, you would have the downtown have historical
Brown.
signage. Yeah, brown. I don't know why it's always brown, but that seems to be what it is.
Because
but-
it's old.
But you could do white as well. I mean, that, you know, I mean, you go to the old signs from like the 40s and 50s, they were white with black lettering.
Well, that's regulatory.
Right. But we have green on everywhere else. So, I mean, if you.
And green is not regulatory. So, I mean,
don't know what
some of the
regulatory is,
colors
I'm just saying they
do
have different
mean
colors.
something. Purple doesn't really mean anything, so it's up for grabs. Anyone else?
There is Wounded Warriors do use purple when
Oh.
they paint their spots, but
Sure.
I don't think there'd be a conflict there.
All right.
White on blue is your general service signs that show multitude, like gas, hospital, parking, prescriptions, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? All right, we're going to move on.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for the presentation. Item V is approval of resolution number 21-25, the plat of River Ridge Estates, 8th edition, to the municipality of Watertown in the county of Cottington, South Dakota. I'm not sure who said that. Bill Hauer? And second by Lallam. And I'll ask Public Works Director Heath Von Eye to say it. Oh, it wasn't Bill Hauer?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, Heath?
Thank you, Mayor. Plat of River Ridge 8th edition. I've shared my screen to show the plat extents. Just another phase up in River Ridge on the north end of town, and pretty straightforward plat approval here. The corresponding development agreement is with this plat. That's been reviewed by staff and includes all the pertinent items regarding the public infrastructure components. It's important to note that there is an off-site detention pond being proposed with this phase that is outlined in the development agreement for the developer to own and maintain that until the point in time when that portion of land is developed and the pond is built and taken over by the city at that point in the future. We did not want to take that over because it's outside the bounds of this platted area, so we left it as a private ownership and maintenance in the meantime for the developer to maintain. They will be building out 2nd Street Northwest in a similar fashion as to what was built south of here. It'll be an extension of that half street section and meet the city's engineering design standards for half road construction. Otherwise, pretty straightforward, and we'll stand by for any questions.
All right, thank you. I'm going to just put a plug in here on the street access certificate. We do have a collector road And I don't think we should be vague about which street when we have corner lots. I think that should be memorialized, that people don't get access onto the collector routes. So this is a basic, doesn't even say the road, just says when you get a building permit, that's when your access will be determined. I'd prefer it to be more explicit, unless it doesn't matter. In this case, it matters because we have a collector route.
Mayor, are you talking like lot 12 and 13?
Yes.
Along Second Street? You're talking about getting direct access to that?
They
Second Street?
do not get access onto Second Street.
Right.
So the way the access certificate could be written is each lot will be allowed to have one access point onto Riley Drive, except for lots 1 and 23, which may have two accesses, one onto Riley, one onto Cheyenne. And lot 12 has one access onto Cheyenne. I mean, that's how we've written them in the past. It's more words. They have to do it for each plat. They have to rewrite the certificate, but then it's memorialized. Just a comment.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, Mayor, that's a great point. We could include a prohibition, prohibiting access onto Second from lots 12 and 13. If we wanted to expand and provide more specific language on other lots, we could do that too. But I think at a minimum, we'd want to cite the.
Yeah, you could also do it by saying no access will be granted directly on the Second Street. And then this is just a question on how you check on I like that you've got in the development agreement that the developer shall complete the grading of all utility easements and drainage ways to within 2/10 feet of the elevation as shown on the approved final grading plan. I know that's been a big problem for utilities when the grading is not close to the grading plan. They put in maybe a gas service, and then the lot either gets cut down and exposes a service, or 4 feet of fill goes on it and it's too deep. How do you check that that's done? Is there just a certificate that the engineer signs stating that it's been met, or?
The process of going through the acceptance of these has been evolving. We've been polishing that process as we go. This has been language that's been in our past development agreements for quite some time now. So I guess my answer to that would be we don't necessarily have a solid way of doing that right now today. But what I would envision doing, what I've seen done worked in the past, is you get a quality grading plan up front with the construction plans. And at the time of inspection, when the improvements are complete, you simply check that grading plan off with the constructed record drawings for the subdivision. Now, these are components that we've gotten hit or miss in the past, but getting a good set of record drawings that show how the development was built and how it was graded out helps make this process easy. You check that off then against the design, the design plans, just to ensure that everything was built as it was approved to be. So that's what I can envision doing in the future. But right now, it's a matter of field inspection. The staff are going out, walking through the site with the developer's engineer. They have the approved set of plans with them. They also have a final approved copy of the development agreement with them, and they're checking off each of these components as they walk through the site at the time of the completion of the improvements. And so that's how I'd summarize how we've been doing it in the recent past.
Okay. I know you've been making improvements, and I really appreciate it. I think they're good improvements. The grading plan is a requirement before the plat's recorded. Is that true? And that's just signed off by you, correct?
Correct. Part of, we receive a grading plan at the preliminary phase where you get some overlap grading type of ideas on how it's going to be graded. We also get a more specific or detailed grading plan with the construction plans. And that full set of construction plan is what we target to have approved before the plat is approved.
Okay. Good. Anyone else have questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is old business. Is there any old business? Councilman Albertson.
I just have a question. Maybe it's for Tim Toomey, but as the summer rolls in, it seems like drivers also have a little tendency to speed up. And a couple of weeks ago, Glenn brought up that there was he had specifically mentioned out by Sharp Chevrolet, there was kind of a speeding issue, changing of the speeds and so on. Well, since that, it prompted a couple of people around my area to especially talk about the dangerous parts over Northwest Lake, Kempesca, where that speed zone is 40 miles an hour there. But it's pretty easy to get a good head of steam there and go more than 40. And so I guess I'm just, maybe it's just, I don't know if it's really a question of what can be done or just an awareness that a couple of people have mentioned to me that their really concerns there are there because we don't have the bike trail, walking path.
Yeah, I share those same concerns, and I appreciate the comment or question. We are doing a lot more there. It's part of our strategic plan. It was just today that we had an officer out there right on Highway 139. They're making stops in the 40, and we're like, golly, I mean, how fast are they going if they're going making stops in the 40s? So we have increased enforcement around the lake, specific enforcement. Typically, in the past, we would assign an officer, hey, get out to the lake when you can, get back to town. You know, we call it a 101, where we drive around the lake and then we get right back to town. Now we have officers assigned out there for specific times, especially the high travel times. We're deploying our bikes out there. We're encouraging our officers to get out on foot at all the parks. So you're going to see a lot more presence, law enforcement presence out there, and I think you're going to see a lot more tickets wrote, unfortunately. So slow down around the lake because we're going to be out there.
Right. Councilman Hoyer?
I'll just toss in too, as a testament to seeing it, it's the first time I've seen a speed sign on Broadway, and I think that helps out a lot. It's right next to Nelson, so you guys are definitely taking steps.
Thank you.
Right, and we're seeing speeding all over town. I've been getting complaints every neighborhood, pretty much, so.
Yeah, speeding and the
spring.
exhibition driving is becoming an issue. The loud mufflers, the drifting, and all those things. So I just encourage the public who's listening, just give us a call when you're seeing that, and we'll respond out there. So thanks.
All right, thank you. Is there any other old business? Okay, any new business? Councilman Hoyer?
Just two things. First one is, I know it's come up a lot in some of the discussions folks have been having while campaigning and things, but with our affordable housing situation, I'm just curious, has the city ever considered doing a request for proposal or pursuing any of those kinds of routes?
For what specifically?
Building affordable housing or just more options, maybe at a lower price point that is a little.
To my knowledge,
More
we've
accessible.
never built housing.
Sure. Well, it's not us building. A request for proposal would be basically putting out to bid if we took a section of city land or something like that and
Yeah.
put it out.
I
And
would-
then put it out to bid essentially to see if somebody
Right.
can meet the guidelines that we set in place and see what our developers can come up
I
with and
think
spark
that's
some
an
creativity.
excellent idea. We did talk about that, and I think that Chris Shilkin, when he was the director of Watertown Development Company, did bring that up a little bit, and Chris and I talked about it at length, about, if we were to develop some city land into affordable housing, that we would do an RFP. I think that would be an excellent thing to do.
I just know that Brookings did one. This doesn't have to be a large swath of land or anything. I think it's just a small thing we could try and
Sure.
see if it sticks. I mean, it's no real expense to the city to do it, so
Mhm.
it just opens it up.
Someone was asking me about tiny homes. There's a movement across, was it you?
Well, we talk about them sometimes. That's not necessarily this, but Sioux Falls did their one for veterans recently that went through. But just seeing what the options are right now, because I think we just need some more variety of housing in town.
I don't remember who that was, but that what they said was, it's a movement around our country, and if we did a tiny house development, we would get interest from builders that do tiny house, not necessarily builders from Watertown, but
Sure.
people who go around the country and build tiny house villages. Was that you, Beth?
Well,
I'm
I've
sorry
talked
if
about
you're
them
out there
before, but
listening.
there could be an appetite for that. I'm thinking more so along the lines of like cottage housing
Sure.
kind of things.
Mhm.
Just a little more old-fashioned style of development that we have in some of our older parts of town. But just exploring the option, because it's definitely something folks are facing
Oh,
in
yes,
town.
for
So.
sure, absolutely.
And
Thank you.
then second thing was just, does anyone know what we would need to do to get some recycling options at a community events such as Thursday Night Live? Because we've got a lot of aluminum cans appearing. And so right now they're getting thrown away. It'd be good to see them just go into recycling instead. So I don't know if we could get some recycling bins down there or something.
Yeah, I don't know why we couldn't.
Oh, they weren't there last year and we don't have them this year.
Well,
I thought it'd be a good responsible thing to
extra
do.
effort. I
Don't they
think so.
make those cardboard, heavy-duty cardboard ones that you put the liners in, and they're good for portable events, or temporary events? Does anybody know? I mean, I've seen them before.
We could just deliver dumpsters.
Okay, that's
for,
fine,
You
too.
know, yeah, I don't know that we have extra ones.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be too much of an ask, but I think it would really help out with the waste
Yeah.
issue that we have.
I agree, yes. Thank you, good idea.
Here, I could talk to the solid waste superintendent and see if, what he could do to help coordinate the dropping off of those containers, and then, of course, the pickup of the
Yeah.
materials and storage of the containers afterwards.
Sure, and
Right.
we've got the public lot right behind that location too on Kemp, so, I mean, back in that shooter's alley, that wouldn't be, or public bathroom alley more accurately, but could be a good spot for it.
Well, and if a private entity wanted to do that and get to keep the proceeds from the cans, I don't know if it's worth it anymore, but,
I think the Masonic Lodge still lets you do drop-offs.
yeah.
We do, and I don't think they're, during the pandemic, they're not accepting aluminum
Oh.
or taking it, so. But it'd be nice to see if the city could drop those off, and then maybe the chamber could move them all together at the end of the night.
Yeah.
And then someone could pick them up in the morning. Or are we in a position to do that?
Well, I think we could. I mean, Heath will talk to the solid waste superintendent and see what his thoughts are, but I think it's worth investigating. Anyway, thank you. Good ideas. Anybody else have new business?
Madam Mayor, I had a brief update on the airport items.
Oh, sure.
If I could. Just a quick update to the council, because you'll be seeing some advertisements for bids coming out here this week. If you recall, we've got two main components left for the airport terminal project. One is the civil site work, kind of the phase 2 of the main terminal project. We've gotten direction from the FAA to go ahead and proceed with bidding that phase of the work. They wanted us to also then combine the snow removal equipment building with that same timeline so that the FAA could issue us one grant for both those projects. So they'll be bid separately but funded under the same grant by the FAA. So come June 8th and 15th, we'll have advertising for those bids. June 22nd, we'll have a pre-bid meeting here at City Hall. And June 24th is the cutoff date for bidder questions, and then that gets us set up for June 29th bid opening date for the phase 2 of the terminal, and a July 1st bid opening date for the snow removal equipment. And I just wanted to provide that update to the council, so when you see that information coming out, you know what it's about.
All right, thank you. It's exciting. Any other new business? Any liaison member reports? Any announcements? Councilman Villar?
For the first time since COVID started, according to DOH, we had no active cases in Cottington County today.
Wow. That is great. Anything else? All right, we do not have a reason to go into, oh, sorry, Councilman Lallam.
Just as an FYI to the public, the election's next Tuesday. Early voting is currently happening here, I believe, at City Hall. Any other locations?
Yep, right there.
Just here. But, you know, it's school board, obviously the mayor and the council positions. So make sure they take advantage of the early voting if possible. Otherwise, next Tuesday, make sure you,
At the Civic Arena, because I know, remember, 4 years ago, there was confusion
Yeah.
where to vote, so it's Civic
there's people
Arena.
at the Extension
The high
Building
school.
and the school. So at the high school, next Tuesday, so on Election Day.
On election day.
So.
Right, thank you, excellent. Anything else? Okay, no need to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, and there